when you are a business owner and you want to market your business, usually what people do is they use their marketing budgets to pay ads and then tell people how good their service is or what kind of good price you're getting. At Contribulate, we actually want to provide an alternative marketing solution for business who wants to help benefit their community and who wants to fulfill their social responsibility. We give them a chance to market, to provide a small percentage donation to the local nonprofits like school parent-teacher associations or local churches or even your Little League baseball teams. And we help them promote their business inside this network in exchange. So we bring them customers who cares a little bit more about other things happening in the community. We have our prototype. Oh, sorry.
You can finish.
Yeah, we have our prototype coming this summer, and I'm looking for a partner or co-founder who can help us on the marketing business development side. Thank you.
Cool. We have next, Diamond Style Coaching. Come on down.
Hello, welcome. Hashtag Women Crush Wednesday. I am here, Diamond Style Coaching, Jennifer Magana. I am here to power down your biocomputer, reset all your inside going on, all that anxiety, all that suffering going on, so that you can go ahead and do a clean slate, create infinite possibilities, taking you from where you are to where you want to be, diametric alignment, head and heart, where you really believe who you are and not running that facade that you're living today. So when you partner with me, I have my Square Reader here today, and I do accept layaway, so what's really holding you back? Then we can go ahead and fund C for Good Foundation, hashtag She Inspires Me, hashtag C for Good, and we can go ahead and become that I go ahead and become that intentional lifeline, that humanitarian virtual lifeline to the people on the streets, homeless, at-risk youth, those who need it most, those who have the sign, those who are ready to impact and change their life. You have a choice. Be part of history, be a director in your life. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. All right, Pandia Health. It's that time. Come on down.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sophia Yen, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pandia Health. At Pandia Health, our goal is to make women's lives easier by bringing them doctor's visits online and medications delivered to their door, starting with birth control. About 3 years ago, while researching a contraceptive talk, I realized that one of the top 3 reasons women don't take their birth control is they don't have it on hand. And we said this is an opportunity to disrupt the slow, monolithic, slow pharmacy system. We will take birth control, ship it to women's doors, and keep shipping it to them until they tell us to stop. And then, when we ran ads for free birth control delivery, we found that 60% of the women didn't have a prescription. Either had it expired or they never had one to begin with. And as a physician, I can write prescriptions. And so this is how Pandia Health was born. Our goal is to make it such that women from the comfort of their home fill out a questionnaire, give us their blood pressure, pay us $39 for our doctor's time, and we're looking for people who can do UI, UX contractors, and we're looking for patient care associates, and we're looking for people to help get the word out. So please tell everyone you know about Pandia Health.
All right, Jennifer. Finally, we have Rhombus Rotors.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Johnson, and I've invented something that's going to transform the world. It's called the Rhombus Rotor. These graphs represent over 6 months of independent CFD analysis. The first graph shows that with my rhombus design, I get twice the forward thrust compared to an open propeller design at the same power. The other graph shows that I get 3 times the forward thrust at the same RPM. The design by itself has a lift to drag of 9, which is twice as good as a typical helicopter. And I'm not even done optimizing it yet. My strength is in design. What I need is to either build a team or to become part of a team to help transition this technology. I don't know who the leader in urban VTOL will be, but they're going to be using the Rhombus Rotor to do it. Thank you very much.
Wow, and you're efficient. All right, our first interview is with Ron Palmeri. Many people don't know that when you make a Google voice call, that is, or was Grand Central, which Ron built. And today he's working on Layer, which, hi Ron, and Don. Anyway, so he's working on Layer, which is a, communication platform used by the Web Summit of all things. I think 50,000 people help them communicate with each other, network, and all kinds of other stuff. Interviewing him is the legendary Don Clark, who spent, I think, 20, 30 years at the Wall Street Journal here, and recently retired to pursue his true passion, which is music. Anyway, gentlemen, please.
Great, thanks, Ina.
Good morning. Warm round of applause for Ron.
It's very nice to be here in downtown Redwood City, one of my favorite places.
What was that?
Only 23 years at the Wall Street Journal, but it just seems like 3 decades. So it's very nice to be here with Ron, who is a true veteran of the industry. He's seen it both from an investor and a CEO standpoint. And I'd just like to kick off by asking Ron to sort of characterize the environment we're in right at the moment. What's it like to start a company now versus, say, 5, 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's an interesting moment in time, actually, because Don and I were chatting a little bit before about kind of the shifts that are going on in the industry. One of course, is that you've got these 5 giant companies that appear to be really driving a lot of the core technical innovation around things like cloud, machine learning, and mobile. And so, as an entrepreneur, you've got to find this space that you can build something into. So that certainly kind of one is, how do you go about thinking about the market and where are there interesting product opportunities? You've also, the other idea though is a lot of these trends like machine learning and cloud really give entrepreneurs so many tools to leverage that really were never available to previous sort of generations of entrepreneurs. So the idea that you could build something, deploy it to AWS, and have something that can scale as you grow is pretty amazing. So I think it's a combination of things. I mean, I've been at this for a while as well, and kind of remember when people used to talk about how IBM was the power, then Microsoft was the power, and then Google was the power. I mean, and now it's Facebook or Amazon. There's always some giant company that's setting kind of the current agenda. But from an entrepreneur standpoint, it's always about finding kind of like where are the opportunities going forward. So I think there's never been a better time. But as always, there are challenges to kind of navigate around.
So circling around to the funding environment, a lot of the venture capitalists seem to have pulled in their horns a little bit. And I'm just kind of wondering what it takes to convince somebody to write you a check these days.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we've seen, so from Layer's standpoint, we launched in 2013, and the funding environment was very positive. So we launched at TechCrunch Disrupt, and that kind of my joke is if any of you have seen HBO Silicon Valley, we were the guys on the stage with the big check. Money was definitely more free then. I think there was also a lot of opportunity around kind of mobile, social stuff. Like one of our earlier customers was a company called Yik Yak that Sequoia had invested $75 million into to potentially become like the next Instagram. And they recently closed down and I think did kind of an acqui-hire. So the idea that there was $75 million available for something that in that kind of mobile social space is hard to imagine now. But I do think that there are plenty of great companies, both the seed stage, Series A, Series B, that are getting funded. But it's really fundamentally about having a clear idea of the product in the market and demonstrating that the fundamental premise of what you're doing is working.
So when you're talking to that financier, what kind of evidence do they want to see that? I think as we were talking, it's not just that you have an idea but maybe that it's been refined and it has some traction. What sort of evidence are they looking for to sort of show that you're catching on or you have something?
Yeah, well, I think it's still, the old kind of the idea that it's always about the team, the technology and the market is still sound. I think the interesting part about this though is it's so much easier to build something, using various kinds of tools, whether it's AWS or something like Layer. And so I think what they're looking for is evidence that as you've iterated, and this is something we were chatting about earlier as well, there's an opportunity to continue to iterate and prove the value of what you're doing. I think ultimately, the way I kind of think about these things is early stage companies are a bit like a logic proof, in that it's based on a series of sort of true statements. So I don't know if any of you have taken formal logic, but it's an interesting way to kind of prove that what you're doing is kind of sound, because each supporting statement of the reason you're doing your thing needs to be true. And so I think ultimately, if you're saying there is a market opportunity here, how can you prove it and prove it cheaply with real customers that are demonstrating that they validate that. Also, the team is always going to be critical. So, one of the challenges I'll always say to, for example, to non-technical founders, it's really important to have a core technology foundation. So, having a team, being able to recruit a team that represents the core of what you're building is really critical. And then obviously the market is always important, because if you're going after a large market, you have some time to kind of navigate around. I mean, Layer has gone through a 4-year journey, starting out with a pretty apps where people could build things, and now we're seeing the enterprise as a much bigger opportunity for us. So I think it's about the evolution and ultimately being able to demonstrate the three fundamentals, which is the team, the core technology you're building in the market.
So just to circle on the founders for a moment, we've had some huge success stories, built with unproven entrepreneurs in the past 10 years. Your boxes and Dropboxes and Facebooks and things. You talk about the team, the technology. How important is it to have a team with a track record versus just some really impressive young guy?
Yeah, well, I think the team, and by team too, I don't necessarily mean just somebody who's got track record. In fact, I think a lot of times it'll be somebody that has a clear insight into something, and you look at a lot of these guys, whether it's Zuckerberg. I think he managed to really demonstrate that he not only especially as they kind of executed. Ultimately, like growth. If you have that kind of growth, then by definition you've got kind of the right team. I think is a little bit of that, right. that sort of like self-fulfilling prophecy, right. I guess. But there are definitely you'll hear VCs say we like people that have like done one or two things already in the market they're going after because somebody else paid for the learning, basically. Right. So that's where you can say an experienced founder might be of interest, but also it doesn't preclude. In fact, if anything, the Valley is very fond of that young entrepreneur who is passionate and driven and working 24/7 to build a business. So I don't think it necessarily it means experience as much as is that person sort of intrinsically in a great position to solve the problem they're going after.
So let's focus a little bit more on the kind of opportunities out there. I think there's some that have been well picked over. Where do you see where are the things that have been picked over, and where do you see the sort of more promising avenues at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think solving real problems that customers are willing to pay for is always a good strategy. One of the things that we see is that if you think about the intersection of again, cloud computing, AI and machine learning, and mobile, the way I kind of look at this, and again, it depends on one's experience base, but for me, when I saw the browser, the first time, it just, to me, it felt like this sort of big bang of, almost the equivalent of the universe being created, and all these amazing opportunities came out of that, companies like Amazon and others, obviously. I think we're at that point with mobile right now. I think if you think about the last 25 years of things that have been built for the desktop web, those are going to be remade for mobile. When we carry these devices with us all the time, there's an opportunity to build entirely different kinds of experiences, whether it's in insurance or healthcare or certainly retail. There's a lot of interesting experiments that are and great companies that have been built there. So I think that a lot of this is really, again, looking at where you can deeply understand a customer's challenge and build something using, I think mobile represents kind of this completely large, decade forward opportunity for people to build great companies. But obviously the big guys are already aware of mobile. It's not like it's a secret. So it's very much around finding those spots where you can do something unique.
So not to give a commercial for Layer, but maybe just to flesh this out a little with a concrete example. Talk a little bit about what you guys do in terms of a kind of a mobile conversation with a customer.
Yeah, very kind of you to ask that question. Yeah, so basically the idea for Layer came from having done Grand Central, which is Google Voice, and that was all about the phone system. So the big premise was communications are going to move off the phone system into the internet. That's like a giant frame. After we launched, we had about 10,000 requests for early access after the Disrupt thing, which was crazy to see. I kind of joke people imprinting their hopes and dreams on what we were doing. What we've really gotten clear about now that we're about 4 years into this is really companies have to remake the way they communicate with their customers. So we're powering these web and mobile experiences that feel more mobile forward, so kind of messaging at their core, but allowing companies to communicate on the devices, whether it's an Amazon Alexa kind of interface, or it's a phone, or a tablet, or a desktop. So our vision is really about this shifting of the way people want to communicate from the phone, email, and things that have been built for the desktop web. So it's everything from helping companies sell products to customers in a more efficient, effective way, and then also providing a more contextualized support experience as part of this one-to-one conversation. So we look at healthcare, helping people find access to the right healthcare services. We see financial services like wealth management or mortgages or credit card is an interesting one. Travel, my example there is I get a push notification from my airline that says my flight's been canceled, and the only option is to call them, despite the fact that I have the mobile app on my phone. So there's a real opportunity to kind of remake communications. I also love communications, having done it my entire career, because I kind of put it up there with a basic human need, kind of almost after air and water. So it's one of finding something that represents like a constant remaking, reshaping, driven by technology is a pretty useful thing.
So you mentioned AI a couple times. Obviously, in the background of a chat with an automated, say, a airline system, automation AI would be a huge benefit. Where do you see the humans remaining? I think there are places for them.
Absolutely. Well, so one of the ideas basically is anywhere that requires empathy is sort of the obvious place for humans. So, and it's interesting too, because if you think about the great example using airlines is the reaccommodation that United did recently, dragging somebody off an airline. I mean, the fact they called it a reaccommodation, I thought was hilarious.
Most people don't have to be hospitalized
exactly,
for those.
after they're reaccommodated. So the interesting thing there is that that was a problem of the systems, like literally dehumanizing the people that were sort of executing the policy. And I think we have an opportunity with technology to kind of flip it the other way around, which is to have the technology really enable people to spend their time on things that leverage the humanity and the empathy that human beings have. And so when we think about a lot of these interactions, so many of them are horrible. You call a call center, you go through an IVR, you have to tell your life story, you get transferred to somebody else, you have to tell your life story again. Those are all crappy experiences that are based on the limitations of technology today. And I think the real opportunity is to kind of flip that and free the human beings to basically do things that really require thinking and as I said, at the core, empathy, which is something that I don't expect AI to be doing anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Some people say that data is the new oil. The frightful five, one of the reasons they are so frightful is that they've got the data already. Yeah. You're a startup, you don't necessarily have access to that. How can you leverage AI in that kind of a world where maybe you don't have the access to start out with all that data?
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. I was at this conference recently, and Stephen Wolfram, who runs Wolfram Alpha, he and I were having this exact conversation in the context of the ethics of AI as well, which was an interesting chat. The real issue is no matter what you're doing, there's always data in context. So, for example, Layer is not a frightful five, but we power the communications experiences for tons of companies and do millions of conversations a day and all this kind of stuff. We have a lot of data that we can do things on behalf of our customers. So I think it comes down to the context. I mean, obviously, the data that Facebook has or the data that Google has or Amazon is monstrous, and they can do things that startups can't. But I would say unless you have there's an element of the data as part of it has to be part of every single startup. because you're doing something for customers, and then there's data that's thrown off by it. You need to constantly be thinking about how to take advantage of that and use it to continue to enhance the experience you're creating.
So just generally, having seen a lot of companies, help them start, et cetera, what are some of the biggest mistakes you see young companies make?
Yeah, so a few very strong points of view about this one, actually. So one is you have to prove things cheap. And what I mean by that is, really, if you have a premise, go out and get very objective feedback. I kind of joke that, the smarter you are, the better you are at deceiving yourself. So you really have to be objective about the feedback you get. I like to tell this story. Aaron Patzer, who started Mint, went out with, if you guys ever, Mint's been now acquired by Intuit for a bunch of years, but Aaron tells a story about going to the train station with his original design, hand-drawn, and showing it to people who were kind of like regular people, not founders or whatever, and people were confused, and then he came back with something simpler, and they were still confused, and eventually came up with something that was like 1/10 of what he imagined doing kind of on that initial landing page, and people finally got it. And that was all with hand-drawn, they call them wireframes or whatever, but being able to prove your premise cheaply, not building a ton of tech that you then have to throw away. It's a lot easier to erase a whiteboard than it is to throw away a year's worth of code. So that's kind of one mistake. I think people go too deep and fall in love with their idea without being objective. So that's kind of one. The other is really just make sure you know who your intended customer is. A lot of lessons for early stage companies is build something and whatever. The problem is that if you're going to find a really interesting large market, you really need to be again objective about who you're building for and hear that feedback and iterate on that.
Is there anything you'd point to in the area of mistakes that relate to funding or interactions with VCs?
Yeah, well, the funny part about the VC thing is it's kind of cyclical. So there have been times where VCs have been like, don't worry about profitability, don't worry about building a real business, it's growth overall. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and that is completely flipped.
Yes.
So it's one of these things where I think you have to be really clear about what you're doing and not kind of get caught up in because there are VCs who have been consistently high performing because they don't do those dramatic, almost like faddish swings.
Right.
So I think you have to be a little bit careful about having a VC tell you what to do. Because it's not their business, it's your business, and unless they've already written a large check, and even then you want to be somewhat circumspect about the advice you get. So I would say not be overly susceptible to the swings, and especially make sure that the feedback that you're getting, either when you're pitching or even if you've got a VC on your board or in your company, that you fundamentally are executing to what you believe is core rather than sort of being whiplashed to a certain extent by what you hear from VCs.
Yeah, we're certainly in a phase, I think, where we've flipped the other way toward cautiousness.
Right.
Is there anything about, say, the size of early rounds or anything about that as far as, do you want to, how deep do you want to get in with these people?
Well, the crazy part about it is it really feels like the things we called the rounds have kind of shifted up. So like a seed round used to be of a certain size, and now which now is kind of equivalent to what Series A's used to be, and it's an interesting kind of thing that's kind of happened. I think that in the early stage, really proving what you're doing on as little money as possible gives you optionality. And if you're doing well, the money, the worst part about raising money is it's easy to raise money when you don't need it. It's very hard to raise it when you do,
Yeah.
So it's this thing where the more you can control that. So take as little money as possible until you really feel that you've proven the underlying fundamentals, I think is a really important lesson. It's one thing for somebody who's on their third company and they have easy access to capital, but I'd say the less money you can raise early, the better, because it gives, instead of it being like, oh, I just raised a $10 million seed round, you're like, that sounds like a Series A, that kind of stuff. I think it's better to not be focusing on the amount you raise, but try to really make sure you're raising enough to do what you need to do to kind of prove each stage of the company.
So putting on your sort of former VC investor hat a little bit more, could you talk a little bit about some really good ideas or really bad ideas that came along, and what happened?
Yeah, let me think about that one. I mean, the cool part about the early stage stuff is that sometimes it's really hard to determine what's good and what's bad, you know, and so, I mean, like, you know, like there's great stories about how, like, you know, Mark Benioff, you know, couldn't get a VC to, you know, touch him with a 10-foot pole, you know, when they were kind of doing their thing, or, you know, Uber certainly is another good example. You know, I kind of have this joke that like you don't judge, like, because you can't, you know, unless you're going to live in that seat, you can't, you know, you can give feedback, but ultimately, who knows which ideas are going to be good or bad. I mean, a lot of the stuff I've seen, you know, is really just more about how do you refine the idea. Like you know, the story I like to tell about the original Grand Central was the first product was based on Flash, and it was like this, the entire page was orange. You know, and I was like, you know, and so we ended up kind of refining it down to where, you know, the initial product was really, really nice and had a very small sort of accent of orange. I mean, you see a lot of bad ideas, but that doesn't mean the core of them are. But you know, you see things that appear bad, but at the core they could still be really solid. So it's important to kind of just refine down if you have an idea, to really test it and see if it holds up with what you think is kind of core.
So for most of my early years in the Valley, the IPO was the thing you looked out on the horizon, and everybody could go, you know, back in the 90s, or most people could. That has certainly not been the case for quite a while now. What is sort of the financial dream, do you think, these days? Is it, you know, you malinger for 2 years and then you get bought by Amazon or somebody big, or what's sort of like the end goal do you see?
Well, I think I mean, the good part about it is there have been successful IPOs recently. I mean, I think there was a couple of years where, you know, you literally, you would only have the ability of being acquired by one of, you know, 5 or 6 companies if you throw like a Cisco kind of in there as well. I think the fact that companies have gone out and had pretty decent IPOs is really healthy, because if it really came down to like an oligopoly of a handful of companies that were the sole sources of exit, that creates really bad dynamics of people that are building for acquisition rather than building for markets. So good companies have gone out. The problem, I mean, the challenge, I guess, is that it's $100 million in revenue now, you know, which is a lot harder to get to. So
you'd say $100 million in revenue is sort of the place where an acquisition becomes possible, or an IPO.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can get acquired if you've got no revenue.
Right.
Obviously, the numbers will be smaller, but yeah, if you want to go public, I think now you have to have a sustainable business, you know, at 100 million. I mean, you even look at like Snapchat went out and then, you know, with their first earnings report, you know, got hammered. I mean, it's you know, to go out, you need to be a real business with predictability.
So we keep coming back to the Frightful Five. In that kind of environment, you have situations, for example, where AWS is kind of like the host for many people, and some people tell me, well, they find out, you know, 6 months later they've made the feature in their product that was my business. You know, those kinds of things happen. And I'm just kind of wondering, what are some of the pitfalls and strategies for avoiding them when you have, you know, such powerful giants?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate reality is you can't control what they do, and they're fast following now, faster than ever. You know, the most recent example was, you know, the Echo came out. You know, Amazon had put $3 or $4 million into a company. They basically incorporated everything they did into the most recent version of the Echo. You know, that's always going to be a challenge. So I think, you know, you have to more than ever, you know, be clear about what you're doing and why. I mean, I don't know there's any way to avoid that, unfortunately. I mean, these are like giant companies that actually are increasingly, I mean, even look at, again, Facebook slavishly picking off every feature that Snap does.
Right.
You know, and so it is tricky, you know, but again, I think if you focus on markets where you understand deeply what there is, that is differentiator. I also like enterprise businesses because it's unlikely Facebook is going to build an enterprise feature. Amazon obviously now is, but yeah, you can't, if you're going to start a company, you have to go for it. You can't worry about that because it's not outside of your control.
So now we do have Microsoft and Google, the enterprise part of Google, trying to make Amazon's life a little harder, and trying to be the number 2 and number 3 and move up in the hosting infrastructure ranks. Do you see anything they're doing to try to to having an impact in the competition and how that affects startups?
That Microsoft specifically?
Microsoft and Google.
And Google, yeah. Okay.
Microsoft Azure and Google.
I'll be fast. Yeah, it's going to, this is like a fundamental part of the computing infrastructure. You're going to have Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, battling it out. One way to view it is it's excellent for businesses that are trying to take advantage of those services because there's good competition. It's going to get cheaper. The hard part is if you're building something that kind of fits narrowly within that context, that white space is going to get collapsed. So, but I do think the enterprise market is a massive opportunity, and the consumer feels a little played out right now. So I would say focus on things that add value to enterprise, and there's a good opportunity there.
Great. Do I see that we are reaching the end?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Ron Palmeri.
Thank you. Thanks, Don.
Sure.
So funny story. When I met Ron, he was a mentor at Founder Institute, and we always talked about his Google Voice Grand Central acquisition, and he told me that there was at least 1 0 missing in the acquisition. Coming back to Aaron Patzer's thing, what color is the Mint logo? Anybody know? Well, it's green. So when he talks about wireframes, Aaron told me that he actually asked 500 people which shade of green the logo should be. So that's the end of the wireframes that he talked with people about. I think we need one more chair. All right, our next panel, raising money from angels. So Will Bunker is not an angel, but he does like micro funding. Did anybody here meet on Match, their significant other? All right, you get a free ticket. Well, what is Match today? Will is actually the founder of, or was the founder. Christina is working on what I call democratizing images, but if you want non-stock images that don't suck, Scopio's the answer. And Edith, I think, LaunchDarkly processes something like 6 billion feature flags a day. So the #1 feature flagging platform is LaunchDarkly. And then I did this backwards, but Anna Shen is going to interview them. And Anna, I looked at her resume or her LinkedIn, and she basically does a bunch of things to help startups. She works with Girls in Tech and Singularity and 500 startups, and she also writes for the Huffington Post. So come on down, everybody. Welcome, Anna. Hi, Christina. Hi, Edith. Hi, Will. Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Awesome.
Was it okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a quick temperature check out there.
these
How
are
many
things
of
that
you
people
have raised money
wanna
from
hear
angel
to do.
investors or angel funds?
So
You think you're going to stay running
How
this thing?
many
or
of you
knowing
want to
you
raise
already have
money
something else
from angels?
cooking?
Okay. How many of you don't know where to start? Okay, great. Well, with that in mind, Will, take it away.
Well, it's interesting because, the natural instinct is to pull up a bunch of websites of companies on Sand Hill Road and then start sending them out your pitch. Your best funding sources, especially if you're beginning, are anyone in your life that you've done a good job for, impressed. They call it family and friends, but a lot of times it's friends because, your family members may not have the wealth to be able to give your money to startups. But I would go down the list of everyone that I've done a good job for. My first funder was the guy that I was working for at the time I did the startup.
Okay. And what do you, when you're doing your research and you do identify somebody that you think is a great fit, what is your next step?
In all honesty, it helps if you come through someone they already trust, and that's where, you hear the word networking and it has a lot of negative connotations, but I look at it as making friends. And so I go out and I make as many friends as I can, and I try to provide value to those people. And then when it's time for me to ask for an introduction, usually if the person thinks it's a good fit, they will do it because if you're an interesting startup, it makes them look good. And so there's nothing wrong with asking people for introductions to professional funders.
Yeah. And just, Christina, what role does persistence play? And can you tell us a little bit about your journey and your capital raise?
Sure. So I've raised from multiple angels. I think that they all come in different ways. Something that Will mentioned that is a secret that I learned later on is that not just asking from friends and family, because I thought that was super frustrating, especially for somebody whose family is in entrepreneurship or may not understand. But what the secret I thought was when your friends actually have raised money and they're startups and they're doing okay, maybe they're also in the seed stage, maybe not later on, but they're early as well. And introducing you to their investors is a good, really solid way to make that happen. So at that point, people really need to understand that when their friends are asking them for advice, to be open also and suggest, and then if you do find a match, go for it. Because I had this other founder that was pitching me basically for me to use his service, and he was like, you know what, you really remind me of my angel that I just got. You should really just have a conversation with her. So I did, and then 2 months later, she invested in the company, and it was that easy. And I think that had I known that from the beginning, that would have been a better strategy than doing all that research. And that's kind of the persistence that you have to say, hey, I know you're my friend, like you like to drink a beer with me, but can you also introduce me to your investor? So.
Okay, and what about your top tips?
So I completely agree with Will. So when I started out, I didn't know anybody in Sand Hill Road. I never met a VC. The advice I got was call up your investment banker friends and pitch them, and I was like, I went to an engineering college.
Don't have those friends.
And I have a lot of kind of geeky friends like me, but I don't have any investment banker friends. I didn't go to Stanford. But what I did have is I was an engineer, so I literally made a list of everybody I knew that had money and everybody I knew who I thought might help me. And so this was a list about 40 people long, and just very systematically, every single person I invited them out to coffee. And a lot of them, as Will said, they didn't necessarily give me money, but they might know somebody else, and some of them ended up customers, some of them ended up mentors, somebody else introduced me to somebody else. But I just, from that, suddenly had a much bigger network than I acknowledged. Like, I coach a lot of startups about fundraising. Everybody says, well, I don't know anybody who has money, and then I'm like, well, you worked at Yelp. Right. Yelp went public, or you just left Cisco. Cisco has a lot of people with money, so people do know more people than can help them than they sometimes realize.
And there are some cons to raising money from angels, and I think, Will, you had a great story. People are sometimes eager, and it may not go as they plan sometimes.
Well, raising money can be a trap in that every time you raise the next round, then the exits available to you get higher. I mean, it's harder. And so if you really talk around and talk to people that have done things that you would go, oh, well, that person's really successful. I met a gentleman in Austin who had sold his company for $75 million, and his net out of it as the founder was $300,000. But he had raised $20 million and taken 12 years. And to raise $20 million, you make a lot of promises, and if you don't keep them, it's brutal. The same happened to the original founder of Match. He raised $10 million, and he made $40,000 from it. And so it's just a very common story. If you peel back the veneer of the hype, you'll find out a lot of people don't get the exit they want.
Now, you did actually have a recommendation. Instead of taking money, build your customer base. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The best money you can raise is from your customers. They are the cheapest source of capital anyone ever found. I mean, we raised $90,000 and cash flowed our business up to a $50 million exit, and it was all from our customers.
I completely agree, and then also not only customers get you more customers. If you have 10 happy customers, they're going to tell 10 more people, and suddenly you have 100 happy customers. If you have 10 happy investors, investors give your company the money it needs to grow, but the real goal of any company is to have a business, not to raise money.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is balancing between them, especially because the founder is usually the best salesperson on the team. So if you're not selling, then you're raising money. And so a lot of, I guess, the mysticalness is, hey, go raise $1 million. And a lot of schools teach that, and a lot of people think that that's what I have to do in order to build this business, when in reality, you maybe need like 20,000 to start or 50,000, and then you can build up from there. But the hype of saying, oh, I need at least, because when you do your calculations, you say, yeah, I do need $1 million in order to get this business off the ground. But in reality, that's not going to happen for you. So I think it's balancing your time and knowing when to be selling, and then when you need money, go for it. But at the same time, it's never going to be an ideal scenario. You're never going to have as much as you want, or as much as you feel like you need.
And Christina, you told me a little bit about this crazy journey you've had raising money. Can you talk a little bit about that and where you started and how your strategy progressed?
Sure. So I started off, I graduated from my master's, and I had been through the incubator route. And so that's what I was just mentioning when they say, okay, go now to these seed stage firms, go pitch your idea, bring your pitch deck, bring your passion. And then you start them, and you're like, realize you're up to number 40, and you're like, okay, well, I just have like this idea. And then you're talking to like, not like creme de la creme, but like big people. And so then you realize, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. So then you go to high profile angels. And then you realize, okay, maybe I'm also too little for that. So then you find people kind of in the middle that can help you, that believe in you. And then that's where that happy medium is. So if you can avoid the whole like show or the flashing, I call them the flashing lights, like don't look at the flashing lights. Then you'll be able to kind of move ahead faster. And that's where the majority of my friends have failed, spending time doing that in the beginning. But really it takes a spreadsheet, and you just have to keep going. And I just finished 500 startups in February. And so they're like, get to number 100. And so I was like at number 50, and I'm like I drafted so many emails to like them being like, help, I'm at 50, like what should I do? And then I was like, no, it's okay. So they're like, just get to 100. So at like 87, things started to change. You get a check-in or somebody that said maybe comes back, and then you're able to gather it. But in total, there are hundreds of conversations that you have, and you need a spreadsheet. You need to be able to track everybody and refer back, because it's a marathon. Like it takes a long time, and that person might be relevant a year from now.
So what's most interesting to me is how do you keep going when you want to cry every single day after pitching that many times?
Well, what helped me is, so the same time I started my company, I also was training for a 100-mile run. So, they kind of went together, like stuff would happen, I would go running, I would think about how to improve my pitch. And you learn a lot of persistence from long distance running of like, okay, this is a bad patch. I totally agree with you, like, when I first started, I was kind of lucky, so I started from the bottom, which was my friends, and my pitch was awful. But my friends would tell me this. Like, literally, my friend is like, that's the worst pitch I've ever heard. Or like another quote I got was, you just vomited on with words. But I was really happy I did this with my friends who could be honest rather than say Mark Cuban. So you just have to have the belief that if you keep doing something, you'll get better. And you do.
And how do you handle the rejection?
I had a spreadsheet, and when I got a no, I would put that person at the bottom of the spreadsheet and gray.
Spreadsheet anger.
No. And quite honestly, I never took it personally. Like, some people who said no, like, turned out to refer me other business, refer me another investor, like, to not take it personally. Like, you're asking people for money.
Yeah, no's not a terrible.
And, it's just, sometimes it's a not right now. And sometimes it's I can help you in many other ways. Like somebody who told me no turned out to be an incredible reference for other people and helped me actually land other investments.
And Christina, what about the role that being in 500 startups, how did that help you raise capital, and would you recommend that route to the audience?
I think if you're in need of validation, or you need a stamp to say like, I'm cool, like I'm great, and I got into 500 startups, then, or YC or whatever, then that incubator route is really good for you, especially for people that don't have the traditional sources of capital or networks to reach out to. So I would say that is always, if you're feeling like nervous, I would say keep trying to get into one of the top 5 or whatever that you can, just because of the support, the community, and the other friends, right? Like I mentioned, one of my friends introduced me to his angel, and that was because I was living amongst, this ecosystem. it's more that's what you'll get, and so you can't expect, you know, validation immediately from just getting into 500 startups. Same thing with going to an Ivy League school. Like, no one really cares. Like, good for you. But then after that, you still have to prove yourself. So.
Yeah. And you are making the decisions regarding who to invest in. Tell me about that. How do you decide what looks good to you?
Well, it's really hard because, you know, in this business, unless you have a massive ego, you quickly realize you're wrong most of the time. It's a stack ranking process, and I think that's the biggest misnomer first-time entrepreneurs have, is when you come in and pitch, you're not pitching against your competitors in the deck. It's the 40 people I saw before you and the 40 people I'll see after you. And I'm just going, gosh, out of those 80 human beings, which one, because I can only do one, you know, can I take a bet on? I sat next to an A-round VC, and I said, well, how many pitches do you see a year? And it was 40 a week, 50 weeks out of the year, and he made one investment every year. So you had to be the best out of 2,000 things that he saw. And that's hard. It's just really hard.
Yeah. And what is your average check size?
We're small. I mean, we're writing, it'll be 50 out of the first fund. We're going to bump it up to 100 out of the second one. We do follow on. So I don't hassle people because I'm not writing a huge check. I wouldn't hassle people anyway. But you will see the process where you get hammered and hammered and hammered by someone who's going to write a really small check, and it's weird. But it's just part of it.
Yeah, if somebody's asking you for ridiculous projections and you're spending 2 months making them because you're obviously not an investment banker, like investment bankers aren't that creative probably, and don't start companies that often, but that takes up way much of your time, and usually like that person will never invest, right?
Or the smallest check you get.
Yeah, so do you learn that the hard way too? You're like, okay, well, you want to impress them, but at the same time, if somebody knows how to invest at that early stage, they know that 5-year projection, is that right?
It's fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay, but like I don't put any value in the effort.
Advice I give other people is to match the amount of due diligence with the check. Like
Right.
if somebody's writing you like you know, when we closed our A round, there's a fair amount of due diligence.
And there should be.
But
yeah.
if somebody's writing you a 10K or 25K check, which is an angel, like they shouldn't be asking you for a lot of an inordinate amount of work. And in fact, that probably means that they're going to be a thorn in your side after they close.
Because they don't know what they're getting into. Yeah.
And what, in terms of what are some of the biggest mistakes you see entrepreneurs who are coming to you? What mistakes are they making, and how can they improve?
A lot of people don't realize that communicating or pitching is a skill. And so they take it as, well, I'm either good at it or I'm bad at it. And since I've focused on it as a skill, I've gotten dramatically better at raising money. It used to be super painful. It's still not easy. I mean, don't get me wrong. You're asking people for something that matters to them and to give it to you. I now just seek fit. So when I'm raising money, I just try to find someone that I resonate with that already wants to give someone like me money. And it's just a matter of, am I that person? Versus trying to convince them that even though you don't normally do this, even though you've never done an investment, like I'm the one you should put money in, I just don't waste my time anymore. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to the person raising money.
Yeah, it's really about finding the right fit. Like I truly think our angels are angels. They've been so helpful. They've been amazing to the company, and it was because they were the right people to invest in our company at that time.
Yep.
And they would not, somebody that invested in somebody's other company might not have been a good fit with me at all.
And Will, you talked a little bit about timing in terms of the fund cycle. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Well, especially for angels, but even for a small micro VC fund, you never have enough capital to match the opportunities in front of you. And so you're always timing. I've missed people that I wanted to give money to that have gone on and done well just because I didn't have the money at the time. I mean, I was waiting for this thing to sell, so there's all this weird personal timing that comes into it. And the same with a small fund. I mean, we're constantly raising money, and so we miss opportunities just because our timing's off. I mean, we'll do a first close on Fund 2 in August. I'm going to miss a lot of deals that I want to do this summer because we don't have the money.
Yeah, and that comes back to like a don't take no as a personal rejection. Sometimes
Right.
it's like it's a no, not right now, but it might be a yes later, yes, can you meet my friend?
Yep.
And there are actually different theories on, is it a numbers game, pitching 100, or is it not a numbers game?
I think you have to have some sort of critical mass if I've talked to enough people to know that my pitch is not getting any better. I've knocked on enough doors. So I think it's yes and no.
Yeah, that's a hard question. You do need enough people because you need to know, just like what you said, this person has never invested in someone like me. They never probably will, and so why should I convince them? So once you have that population, you're like, okay, that was a mistake. Like, glad I finished that. Like, let me move to the next thing. And that's what the numbers help you with. And then, because honestly, like, entrepreneurship, if you want to call it that, is a practice. So you actually have to do it. I studied it, and it isn't until every milestone or everything that I do that I learn from it. So it's literally just practicing. It's skill building. It's being able to talk in front of people, communicate your message very clearly and shortly. And so that's why I would say that numbers is important, how you see yourself in front of all those people and how you can manage that.
Yeah, reading about getting punched in the face is different than getting punched in the face.
Every day.
Every day, yeah. It just feels different.
And what do you think the most important skill that a founder needs to have when they're actually pitching?
There's so many skills. There's resilience, there's enthusiasm, there's confidence, just being willing to take a chance to your company.
I would say probably being more personal. So if you're going in front of a big angel group, your personality is going to be stiffer, and there's a chance that somebody will sabotage the rest of the group, or that things won't work
there'll be
out.
at least one.
That's a very important thing. Like, don't be careful with that. And so that way, if you're having a one-on-one coffee with them, they'll be like, you know what, why did you start your company? You can be honest with what you're doing. And then maybe, just like you said, human, like out of all the humans, it's really because they want a human connection with you. So in those big settings, it's oftentimes impossible unless you have that great, perfect growth chart.
I mean, for me, when I started to be able to raise money easier, it's when I learned to tell a story. And then I just found people that liked that story. And so it's being able to communicate the story arc of why I'm doing it, what I'm doing, what we see in it. And getting good at that, I think Nancy Duarte has a book called Resonance that was brilliant. And I would just take little flashcards and put 2 or 3 words on it and then build a story arc with it. And whether I have a deck or not, I can tell that story.
And is there an example of someone's story that you loved, someone who gave you a pitch recently?
I mean, I fall in love with all I'm a sucker that way, and that I really like to listen to these. I'm a Southerner, I love the stories. We've got one right now. She's an awesome founder who is a chemist who's analyzing wine and then putting a kiosk in a store to help you pick the wine out. And it's not, the idea is good, but I just like her. She's just a really awesome person, and I think she's going to do something with it. But that's my preference and how I try to tune.
Yeah. And actually, we did speak a little bit about the pitch deck, which I'm sure everybody's spending night after night working on. What are your top tips?
At the angel stage, I don't think you need a pitch deck. I think it gets in the way. I think, to Will's point, you're telling a story. And I think people obsess about fonts and designs and the order instead of thinking that at the very early angel stage, what you really want to do is look somebody in the eye and have them believe that you could succeed. And a deck doesn't help with that.
I think on my team, if you pulled everybody on my team and we said, like, if you could erase one thing from your memory and never hear about it again, what would it be? And it would be the deck. And because people have so many opinions about it, you literally spend so much of your time doing it, and then at the end of the day, it's just about you. But the thing is, people require it, so you're like, do I give a deck, or do I give a one-pager, and how do I communicate this message effectively? So I say, if you can, just like have a short one, maybe 6 slides, and then just like key sentences, like very abstract and but like I don't know, some photos from Skopje in the deck, and that's it, and move on. And you know, be honest and be like, you know, I'd rather you give me 20 minutes of your time for me to explain my story. And if that person says yes, that might work too. But you need it,
I mean,
guess.
I use the deck as a screening device as someone even competent on any level. So not that I don't pay much attention to it, but if you don't have a deck, then please don't take up my time.
Okay.
But if they come to present to me, I no longer present with a deck. A deck is someone I send something to get the meeting, and after I've already realized they want to invest, I will send them the deck, and then they rationalize their decision looking at it. And that's it. I don't use it in the meeting, that's for sure.
Yeah. Get help with it, for sure. Don't try to do it on your own.
I'd like to take a few questions from the audience. Please stand up and speak loudly.
So my question is, if you can bootstrap, is there a reason why you want to try to get, seed angel investments? Is there a benefit, like going through like an accelerator program?
So I think if you can bootstrap successfully, that's perhaps the best route. You don't dilute. You're in control of your own destiny.
Only if the idea requires you to get capital to compete. I mean, if you're in a network effect business like eBay, I had the #2 auction site behind eBay, and that was a really shitty place to be. And so there's some businesses that require it. I prefer businesses that don't personally. But, at the end of the day, you have to kind of map out your outcome strategy and go, well, does taking the capital give me a higher chance of getting my outcome from the business? And that outcome's personal, so I can't tell you for you what it is.
Hello?
Yep.
Okay. In the back.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm curious what you guys think about these people that come to you as official networkers, and they either ask for some money from you or for some stuff from you, probably a mix of both, and they promise you that they're going to open, thousands of contacts with you for investors. Thank you. I have a mic.
So-
I don't know if it works. So as an investor, and as founders, what do you guys think about those people?
That is one of my pet peeves, because let's start with #1, it's illegal. You need a broker-dealer license to make money from raising money. And so most of the people that are doing that try to do it under the table. And #2, it's just bullshit, but that's just me.
I agree.
I think there was someone over here.
Good morning. What's the most important slide in a pitch deck?
The most important slide in the pitch deck.
One slide.
The one slide.
There isn't.
There
Yeah,
is-
there
it's-
can't be.
it's the
It's,
most-
it's an arc.
The most important slide is you, the founder.
Yeah, it's just, there's things that are required, but there's no magic slide that everyone then just goes, oh, here, take my money. It's the story.
Yeah, right to over if you, okay. Oh, over here, okay.
Yes.
Sorry, we can't see too well up here.
Hi. I traveled up here from LA, and I have a frustration as a founder. I've been bootstrapping my startup and have learned a lot. One of the things I'm frustrated about as a female co-founder or founder is that I get sent all these invitations to come to this mixer, and you just pay a certain amount, and we'll introduce you to angels. And I just thought it was a bunch of BS, and I think it's a scam. And can you shed light on that?
Yeah, you guys.
I
don't get
actually
those
just wrote,
emails.
I had an Alley Watch interview and I talked about that too. If you have to pay for things, it's sometimes hard to make those decisions. Usually try to say, just be an attendee, but usually stay away from things that charge you, right?
Pay to play, yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah.
It's really, I feel like it's taking advantage. It's like going to a trailer park and selling
Especially to,
cancer
like,
insurance or something. It's just like, you're just taking advantage of vulnerable people.
horrible.
Yeah. Well, but I knew people that did that. It's terrible. I agree.
Not a business.
You don't even need to respond to the email. Just like drop it and move on.
We have time for one more question.
So I was a first-time founder, and I really liked Will's advice about ask people you worked for. So our first angels were my old bosses because I'd made them millions of dollars at prior jobs. I'd started business units. I'd increased revenue, and they were like, okay, we saw you do this successfully for us. Take my money to go do it on your own.
I'm a first-time founder, so I'm going through that now, and I think it's just keeping your ears peeled, learning as much as you can, speaking to people that have done it, building relationships, knowing that it takes time. It's not something that people are going to give you validation for right away.
The easiest thing to do is to learn every possible scrap of information about the business you're launching and the industry you're in, and to know it frontwards and backwards, all data, because that's a way you can demonstrate competence, and it comes out if you're ignorant about what you're going into. It shows.
And that's all we have time for. What a great panel. I'd like to thank you for coming today and sharing your insights. Thank you.
This mic thing doesn't work again. Okay, so I'm wearing my Cuba outfit today. I guess there was a bunch of Cuban startups at TechCrunch in New York. And I'm a big believer of doing something to impact. In the previous life, I had a dream of peace in the Middle East, and I thought I could create peace by bringing companies here, which I did. Bootstrapped an accelerator program, brought 35 companies here over a period of a year, built a network of 500 mentors, and helped them raise about $40 million, but gave up on the idea of peace in the Middle East for now. But I want to do something with Cuba, so if anybody's interested or has connections or knows anything about Cuba, wants to do something, I'm working on something cool. Our next speaker, Nancy Hua, is the founder and CEO of Apptimize. And basically, Apptimize allows big companies to push features and A/B test things. Apps like Hotels Tonight and Vivo use it. So everybody, welcome Nancy Hua from Apptimize. You're welcome.
Okay, thanks guys. So I'm going to tell you about how I started the company and some of the things I learned. And the main focus of a lot of it revolves around a question I've always asked myself since I was a kid, which is, why do I exist? Why am I on Earth? I think I'm just very philosophical, so everything I do starts with that question actually, and it led me here, which has been a weird path. Okay, some background on Apptimize. You did a great intro. We started the company 4 years ago. That's when we did Y Combinator. 3 years ago is when we launched, and that's when we raised our Series A, a little after that. 2 years ago is when we raised our Series A. At that point, it was $6 million. And then last year was when we raised our Series B. So now we've raised more than $20 million, and we have customers all around the world. We're probably installed on your phone right now because we're in the top apps in every category, basically. So Wall Street Journal, Starbucks, Western Union, Hotel Tonight, Trulia, just anyone with an app is our customer. So I'm going to tell you how I use this question of why I exist to guide myself as a CEO and as everything in my life. So when you're a startup founder, people are always asking you, why did you start this company? What's your vision? What's the mission of all of this? Why Apptimize? I get less, but I still get the question of why I started a company in the first place. I think that you know, there's those stories of kids that sell milk door to door when they're a kid, and they like start their own computer company or something like that. And I know Drew Houston had an SAT prep class that he started in high school. Those stories are amazing, and I'm always like, yeah, of course you're a founder because you just have it in you somehow. But that's really not me. I wasn't the type of kid that did that. I read a lot. I thought a lot. I was in my own head a lot. After like a lot of my motivations around everything that I did, up until like I started this company really, were pretty individualistic. It was like, I want to be number one. I want to prove how good I am. I want to learn more stuff. I want to challenge myself. And that was enough to get me pretty far in life. Like that kind of attitude, that ambition was always there. And I think it was because, you know, I felt really blessed. I knew that my parents had sacrificed a lot to give me a lot of advantages, so I held myself to a really high standard. I didn't compare myself to them, of course, because their lives were really hard. My life was pretty easy, so I was like, I should do even better. And the first thing I did after college was I went into high-frequency trading, and I wasn't really thinking about, you know, anything other than paying off all of my debts and like taking financial responsibility for myself. It was about doing something that I knew I'd be pretty good at doing, and knowing that I could be the best at it and prove that I was number one. And it was really fun. I got really lucky with high-frequency trading. I could see that, like, you know, it's really obvious right away if you're doing well or not. And when you're doing better than someone else, it's really obvious, and you can point to it. After a short period of time, I was the top trader in the company. I ran the top team. We made the most money. We traded the most asset classes. And I thought things were going great. There was nothing in me that was like, I need to start a company. It was like a burning thing. I felt really good about myself. You know, my main goal had been to pay off all my student loans and everything because we were always poor growing up. My parents, you know, I had free milk as a kid, free lunch and everything, and I had a lot of financial aid for college, and a lot of my objectives around making sure that I took responsibility for myself financially. And it definitely did that. With the first bonus I ever even got, I paid off all of my debts, and pretty soon I was really responsible for myself and for my whole family. I thought that that was just what I was going to do. I think I didn't view myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't view myself as a founder. I viewed myself as someone who was really good at high-frequency trading and was just going to do that for the foreseeable future. And I wasn't super introspective about you know, what that was going to take me. But then a lot of things changed that caused me to revisit like why I was doing anything. It kind of started with when I started taking responsibility for more than just myself, when I started taking over my family finances and like looking after my parents more. I realized that that's just like slightly more responsibility than it was for me to just be responsible for myself. It required another level of discipline and drive. And it got a lot harder when both my parents got cancer. And they both got cancer at the same time, which was really crazy and weird. And everyone would always be like, why do you think that's happening? That's so surprising. But it was stage 3 and stage 4. And every weekend I would go fly somewhere to visit one of my parents because they lived in different states. So I was based out of Chicago and New York, and my parents were based out of Pittsburgh and New Jersey. So I would fly like to alternately visit them. And I got to think a lot while I was on those flights and while I was in the hospital with them. I thought a lot about like, you know, what's the point of all of the money I'm making and how I'm like able to take care of them when they're just suffering kind of like everyone else. And we were just kind of on the same level as everyone who didn't have a lot of our advantages, and even people who were above us. It was just like very humbling. And something that really touched me was a lot of people came to the hospital who were complete strangers, who visited my parents and made them soup and stuff that, you know, they didn't even know us. And that's definitely not a thing that would have occurred to me, especially at the time, because I was I'm loyal to the people that I know, but at the time I wasn't very like reaching out to strangers or doing anything like that. So I started thinking about how it was kind of cool that they were taking responsibility for us even though they didn't know us, and how there's this whole society around us where people kind of care about each other even though, you know, we don't really know each other and have anything to do with each other. And that really moved me to think about like some more stuff in my life. To be like, what would it mean if I were responsible for more than just me and more than just my parents and my immediate family, or even just the people I know? What would it mean if I were responsible for, you know, people that I'll never meet even, or completely strangers, or people who I'll never meet because, you know, they'll exist after I'm dead, like all the future people. And it was like this kind of circle of thinking that kind of confronted me with these hard questions that I wasn't thinking about in the day-to-day life. And I think that's what happens to you when there's these big events that just show you how your whole plan and everything you thought made sense, like really don't make sense. So I spent a lot thinking about how much I owed everybody. I think that had always motivated me because a lot of what would drive me through going to MIT and like doing well in trading and everything I'd done before that was like how much I owed my parents. It's not like I'm very Chinese and into filial piety at all, actually, because like when you would talk with my parents, I never did any chores and I was always like not listening to them. But at the same time, I was very aware that like I had a lot of advantages that they didn't have. And I was aware that I could never repay all of the debts that I owed them. It's just impossible, because it's not like I ever even asked them for the stuff that they did for me. They just did it on their own. And then I started thinking about, well, now I owe all these strangers who are visiting us in the hospital this debt that I can also obviously never pay them because I never asked them for this either. And then I was thinking about, well, what about like all of these people who, you know, existed before I was born, who created all the science and technology that allowed me to do anything. And that kind of motivated me to get out of bed a lot of the time. It wasn't like I was ever lazy, but sometimes it was a lot of work to do the work that I was doing, running these teams and doing everything. And I would just think like, what if instead of getting out of bed and doing his work and like inventing, you know, the printing press like Gutenberg did, or what if Einstein like stayed in bed and didn't like come up with all this research and he just did what I feel like doing, which is, you know, staying in bed, watching Netflix, texting my friends or something like that, then we would never have all this stuff that we have now. So I would also motivate myself through thinking about all the debts that I owed these people that I wouldn't, you know, from centuries ago. And I started to feel like I really wanted to make sure that my life was not a waste of time, that I could pay forward some of the stuff that I felt like I'd really benefited from and that we all benefit from. And it's a hard question of thinking of how to do that because I'd never really thought about things in those frames before, but thinking about like, why do I exist? What is the impact I'm gonna have on the world even after I'm dead was something that like really bothered me and just something I'd like never stop thinking about. And it's weird because like, you don't really ask yourself those questions usually especially in finance, because the purpose is very clear. It's like to make more money, and that's the moral good. Like it would be immoral and incorrect to do something that caused you to make less money. So it was confusing thinking about it in that sense. And I don't know, just even starting a company at all was a weird conclusion because like I was doing well. Some of my friends, they were like, oh, I started a company because I could never get hired. But that was not me. Like, you know, I could totally get hired and continue just working well. But I was thinking about like, how do I make sure that I actually don't feel guilty anymore about all this stuff that I owe the rest of humanity? And yeah, just thinking back to the people that I actually really admire and that I feel like I owe the most to, everything that I have, I realize it's because of somebody who rose above their own self-absorption. I wouldn't exist if it weren't for, you know, people who decided to do something to add to the world above their own comfort. And, you know, that just caused me to work a lot harder and think like, what is the hardest thing that I could do? Because honestly, like the thing with my parents was the hardest thing that had happened to me. Before that, my life was pretty easy. I would work hard, and it wasn't as easy as a lot of other people's lives, but it was like really easy compared to my parents' life. And I was just continuing to ask myself, like, why do I exist? And in the face of death and all this stuff, like that question just starts to like come at you all the time. And I decided that my mission in life was to make as much impact on the world even after I'm dead, and as much as possible while I'm alive as well. I never really decided to care about that wide a sphere of impact before. I'd always just, you know, thought I need to achieve a lot to, take care of the people that I know. But this was my answer to caring about not wasting my life, making sure that I felt like I'd contributed something. And I knew that starting a company would be really hard for me because it wasn't my natural tendency at all. I had no background in this, and no one in my company and no one in my family had done this. The reason I decided that I wanted to do something that allowed other people to innovate more is because I felt like that was the ultimate solution to things. Part of me really wanted to just keep making more money because I was making a good amount, and it was fun. It was fun to dominate. It was fun to be number one. But I just thought that making more money was kind of inadequate because to scale, you need to invent stuff. Even if you have all the money in the world, you can't really feed all people forever without something innovative. And I wanted to make sure that, we helped people accelerate learning. And that's one of the themes that Apptimize is all about. I'm not going to talk too much about the current company except we help people understand more about their users and their business that they wouldn't know otherwise. And that makes me feel really happy when our customers say that they learned all this stuff. When they say that they feel like they're geniuses because of our product, that makes me feel like I'm helping people forward. And then, so after I got an okay answer to why I existed, and decided to start a company, it was still really hard. From the outside, I think you could look at our company and think that it was going really well. Our first customers were pretty big companies. We were signing, Rakuten and Starbucks and stuff like that. We're in a lot of different apps, hotels.com, just companies that are major and important wanted to use us and thought our software was important. But if you guys have ever seen that show, Silicon Valley, a lot of the things that happened in season 1 also happened in my company. I hadn't really thought about all of the lists until I was looking at a recap. But basically, it's true we all lived in my house, and I had a lot of people who refused to move out of my house. So they were living there for free. We had engineers who argued over which one was better and which one should be the manager of the other. This is in a 3-person team. And we had people threaten to sue us over a trademark. We had a gigantic Huli-like company try to acquire us and then say they wanted to partner with us and then try to clone our whole product. And then I remember as we were watching season 1 and all this was happening to us concurrently, I was like, wow, I really want to see what happens in season 2 so that I know what is going to happen to Apptimize. And we all worked every day for the first several years of the company. We worked on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and New Year's Day, and I'd ask my team, are you sure you want to work on Christmas Eve? And they'd be like, yeah, I don't have anything else to do. This is what I do. And even after we raised our Series A and it was less like we're on the verge of death, we still worked on Sundays. I asked the team, and they were like, yeah, I couldn't do without Sunday. When are we going to have all our internal meetings and stuff? We worked the most when things were going well, because I think that's when you're really seeing progress and you're motivated. That's the thing. When things are easy and it's great, everything's great. Everyone's happy, everyone's motivated. But what keeps the team going when it's hard? When it's super hard, there were a lot of things that were really hard. My co-founder left after a year and a half. That was very stressful and hard. All the rounds of funding were pretty hard. I mean, we got very lucky with our first round because that round was very good to us. And it was right after Y Combinator, and we set a lot of records when we raised that round. But when I was raising our Series B last year, several of our investors straight out told me not to do it. It was, I don't know if you recall, but it was in the beginning of last year when there was this SaaS apocalypse thing going on. The LinkedIn and everybody was getting smashed in the public markets. There were all these blog posts about how it's a venture correction and stuff like that. And I just, every time someone just forwarded me one of these blog posts, I'd be like, why, why show this to me? What's your idea? We have to raise this round. And then it was still really good to us. We still raised a really good round. We raised more than $12 million, and we had really top-tier investors involved. But it was hard, and it was an intensive process. And when things get hard, what keeps you going? And it goes back to the philosophical question that I pose to myself every day still. Why do I exist? And I'll challenge my team to answer that question, and I'll ask myself that question. And it's weird because, when someone's like, why'd you start Apptimize? What's the vision? I have my pitch, right? I have my spiel. So that answer kind of starts to fade in intensity to you because it's scripted. But For me, it's a really comforting exercise when things are hard. I genuinely ask myself, like, why are we doing this? Because I don't need this. Like, part of me is always like, I can just go back to trading or go do something else. Like, I don't need this. But then, you know, it's a hard thing to answer because you have to figure out what makes you happy and what you really think, what you really are motivated by when nobody's looking at you, when nobody's watching, you know. When things are going well, it's easy to answer the questions because it's going well. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I started this company. People obviously want this. But when it's not going well and people aren't taking your calls or whatever's going on and people are leaving, like, then you really have to look at yourself, and it's a much harder question to answer then. But if you have a good answer, then I think that gets you out of bed in the morning, and it wakes you up, and it makes sure that the team is motivated. That's a real time when the answer matters, because most of the time when you ask that question, you know, the people are just kind of randomly curious. They don't really care about the answer. But when you ask yourself that question, that's like the most important question to ask is why, and the most important person to ask that of is yourself. Okay, so I'm wrapping this up now because I'm out of time. I want to say that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the kindness of so many people. The startup community is really great, so if I can in any way pass on the stuff that I've learned, feel free to reach out to me. It's not like we've made it at all, so don't just like, you know, listen to everything I say. We still got a long ways to go, but yeah, please let me know if I can help. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. All right. So our next speaker, Michelle Zatlyn, is co-founder of CloudFlare. And it's funny, she was here, I think 3 years ago, 7 months pregnant. And I just said hi to her, and she's like, wow, we were a startup, and now we're a real company. We have 450 employees. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but probably going in some direction of a IPO, I would think. Anyway, Michelle's going to be interviewed by Dawn. Dawn's not in the program because I messed up, so we had to pivot. We got an email from Michelle's assistant yesterday asking, hey, who's interviewing Michelle? I thought it was supposed to be a presentation because last time you gave an awesome one. Anyway, welcome, Michelle, and you guys already know Dawn. Thank you.
Well, it's nice to be back here again. Yes, as I didn't know I was doing this till yesterday, so what I don't know about Michelle and our company is a big subject, but we won't go into that. Michelle is a very successful founder. She just told me her company now has 450 employees and data centers pretty much all over the world. She's got 20 in China so. Yep. Anyway, your company was founded in 2009, you said?
Yeah, we started working on it really late 29, but we launched at a conference kind of like this, TechCrunch Disrupt, in September of 2010. So we're almost 7 years old. Okay, so we are supposed to talk today about the kind of team process of a startup. And I just want to let Michelle talk a little bit about the sort of creation myth of CloudFlare and how you guys got together and see what lessons there were there. Yeah, so we started CloudFlare. We were students at business school. And so I started to work with a classmate of mine as a class project. So instead of taking a class, we did a school project. And the idea was, is there a way that we could help internet properties be fast, safe, and reliable online? And the way, I knew nothing about this domain, by the way, but my two founders, Matthew and Lee, had started something back in 2004 called Project Honeypot, which basically tracked web spammers. So they knew a ton about web spammers, and Matthew was always talking about this project. And finally, I was like, Matthew, what is this? He's like, well, you know, websites sign up, and they put little honeypots on their site, and they track the web spammers. And I was like, well, how many people sign up for that? And he said, oh, we have 80,000 websites. And I was like, 80,000? How do they hear about you guys? And he's like, I don't know. They just hear people talk on community bulletin boards. And I was like, okay, and what does Project Honeypot do? It's like, well, we basically put the webmaster puts honeypots on the sites and sends all the data back somewhere, and then Project Honeypot works with the law enforcement agencies to go find the offenders and actually get the spammers offline. And I was like, doesn't that take a long time? And he's like, yeah, years. And I was like, I was like, why does anyone use this thing or sign up for it? To which finally he said, Michelle, one day our users want us to create a service that actually uses the data to actually stop the bad guys. And I was like, and so that was how we started. So we started to work on this idea, is there a real problem here? And so as a good business school student, I went was there a real problem? And I did this, survey. And it was one of these things where we sent it to 500 website owners and 150 replied, which if you do any email marketing, that's a really, really high response rate. So the fact that so many replied meant that people were really engaged. And when you read through kind of like the answers we got, it was things like web spammers make me believe in the death penalty. Really visceral, like the people responding like just had a disdain for these web spammers, steal resources, they're the scourge of the earth, they should be in jail. And so again, as someone who didn't know much about it, this was like, oh my goodness, like clearly there's a real problem here. And then when you kind of said, okay, well, what do you do to protect yourselves? Nobody was using a systematic service. There was all these Band-Aids or homegrown. And so it was like, could we use technology to create a service that actually helps solve this problem in a really elegant way? So then we started saying, okay, what would that look like? And this is back, back in 2009, and we said, well, should we build hardware? We were like, no way, that's way too expensive to distribute. Should we build software? And we said, no, it's too hard to maintain. So we became a service, and we kind of thought about that. And then my last part of the story is, so we kind of went around and we had built a business model, and we think there's a real business here. And we went around and we started to tell people about it, like some advisors we trusted. And we, if you're a student trying to start a business, you have such a advantage, because if you have a .edu email address, you can almost email anyone and they'll reply to you. And so we really kind of, and then there was the alumni of the
Unless they're spammed or spoofed, right?
Right, and that's bad. But anyway, we really leveraged some of the alumni of the school and who kind of knew a lot about this area, and they would at least set up a call with us, and we would say, okay, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're thinking about it. And like the number one objection we got as we told people our idea, or advisors, people we trusted for feedback, it was, hey, this is really clever. I do think that there isn't a good solution for helping make internet property safer, but you're going to add a step in the lookup process, which is going to make things slower. And a real business will never pick security over performance, is what someone said. Several people told us that. So we said, okay, so as a good entrepreneur, and hopefully all of you, because people are going to tell you all the things that are wrong with your idea all the time, so we kind of took something that was wrong, we turned it into an asset, and we said, okay, well, how do we solve that problem? And so pretty much what we came up with is like, let's build a global network, and today we have 115 locations around the world, including mainland China, which means that we're really close to where internet surfers are connecting online. And if we're really close to the eyeballs, we can both cache content to make it fast, and we can also filter the malicious traffic to make it safe. And so all of a sudden we became a service. CloudFlare is a service that makes any internet property, small or big, fast, safe, and reliable around the world. And if you go back and look at our business plan from business school, that is the exact same word. So we definitely did not pivot. But we did learn as we kind of were forming the idea.
So focusing back on the team part of it, we're supposed to talk about that. So you had your three yourselves and two other co-founders.
Yep.
Talk about finding the nucleus of the expanded team that could actually make a business happen.
Yeah, so it's I living in San Francisco, in Bay Area, I'm always, there's so much good content online of how do you find a founding team, and there's like a lot of points of view online. A lot of it's good. Some of it I disagree with, but I think that, you survey 10 different founding teams and you probably will get 7 different answers. And so at the end of the day, it's kind of, you're in charge, you have to do what's right for you and make it work. For us, I think things that worked really well is, Matthew, Lee, and I, there's 3 of us that started the company, and we are very different people. And so we have very different skill sets, very different backgrounds, but we had this really shared vision that brought us together, and we trusted one another, which was really important. And so when we started, and now 6.5 years later, obviously it was the right choice, but at the time it was not obvious. And I'd get a lot of people saying, why are you starting a company with Matthew? And then I had a lot of people say to Matthew, why would you want to start a company with Michelle? People are very confused, and what I think the best analogy is we were like a Venn diagram, and we covered a lot of surface area. So we kind of had these 3 circles. We had a little bit of overlap, and you need some overlap because that's where you need a shared vision and trust and whatnot. But we covered a lot of surface area, which meant, Matthew is an amazing visionary, incredibly strategic. I mean, he has a technical background, so computer science, English, so he can tell stories. He also went to law school and business school. And as a tech CEO, being business tech technical, like business technical and policy legal is really, really, really powerful. And so he's great at that. But some of the details of, okay, if we're going there, what are all the things we need to do to get there? Not his strength. I'm much better at that. It's like, okay, we're going there, and sometimes I can be like, oh, that's awesome, and other times I can be like, no, that's a terrible idea. We shouldn't go there. We should go, we'll try again. But once we figure out where we're going, I can help make the trains run on time or put the processes in place or get the people directed in that area. And then Lee was our technical founder. And so a lot of the initial architect, a lot of the initial testing to build this sort of thing. And he was able to attract really great technical talent. Because at the end of the day, we're a technology company, and R&D is the lifeline of what we do. And so we were really fortunate to have a really strong technical founder that could help recruit great technical folks to be on our founding team to help make our vision come to life.
So let's just flesh that out, just to reiterate what you said. So it's great when the founders have complementary strengths.
I think so.
And then,
it's hard though sometimes.
And then when you get those, when you're trying to get that next level of people, what are the key hires first?
Yeah, well, so again, it depends on what your business is. And in our case, we had this vision. We were really good at telling the vision. We were pretty clear that there was a problem here. We had to go build it. So we needed engineers to help us build things. And again, Lee was doing great, but he needed folks and again, he was a pretty strong generalist, but he didn't know everything. So we needed someone who's needed a really good C-level coder, because we were doing some pretty low-level programming. We needed someone who really knew analytics. We needed someone, because again, we were like, well, we need to build out all these data centers. We started with 0. We didn't know how to do that. And so we had to find someone who could help us manage them while we brought them offline. And that was our 6th hire. So those are some of the key hires for our business that made a lot of sense. And then pretty soon it was like, okay, we have to make this look good for end customers. We need someone more on the front end. And so that was kind of our progression. What was interesting is, and so those were kind of our first 7 hires. And then our 8th hire, before we kind of launched the service to the public, and we had been running this private pilot. So over this whole time, we basically started a private pilot, and we were trying to get to 100 internet properties. So again, if you're a website, an app, a blog, an API, anything, a toaster connecting to the internet, you want to be fast, safe, and reliable, you can use Cloudflare. And so today, we have 15,000 new sites that sign up every day. But back in the early days, when I was in your chair, getting to our first 100 customers was so hard, so hard. And I remember we had gotten finally, every day we were, making progress. I had this piece of cardboard because we're so poor, we had no resources, super scrappy. And, we'd as more person signed up, we'd just color in the cardboard to try and get to the 100. We had a 100 meter kind of thing. We just kept coloring it up. And we said, okay, if we get to 100, we're going to take everyone to Vegas. And we got to 100 eventually. It took us a month longer than we thought. And we took the whole team, all 5 of us, to Las Vegas, which was really, really, really fun because we had to go celebrate along the way.
You had to rent a sedan.
Yeah, well, we flew there, thankfully, from Southwest out of San Jose. It was very inexpensive, and we stayed at someone's friend's house, but it was great. But and so we had all these engineers, and we had other folks who joined, but our 8th hire, which I think surprised a lot of people, because again, we went from 100 to 1,000 people in our private beta before we launched to the public, again, at a conference like this. And we were getting ready to go launch at this conference, and no one knew who we were. We were so under the radar. And we just said, okay, wow, when we launch, and if this starts to really grow, we need someone to help us with our community. Because our customers from day one were all over the world. We did not have, everyone in the Bay Area was using Cloudflare and other people weren't. And so our number 8th hire was a community manager. And so again, this was not a developer, and their job was to say, okay, when we launch and we have all these folks kind of talking about us on Twitter or wherever, or talking about us at Stack Overflow, having someone there to be part of the conversation. And so his name was Damon, and he found us online, and he ended up joining. He was with us for 5.5 years, and he was amazing. And to this day, I remember I was hiring a head of marketing, and I said, yeah, and you'll meet Damon during the interview process. So wait, that's a real person? I see his name everywhere in all these comment boards. I thought it was a bot. I was like, no. Damon's a real person. He was one of our first hires, and really
So not to get too far ahead too fast, but that first 8 people, how did you find them? I presume you didn't just put an ad up on LinkedIn or something.
Well,
Sometimes I did. I mean, so the first couple, again, when we had nothing, we found them. One we found on LinkedIn. We reached out to them. It was, again, the C-level programmer, and he had this great background, but was working as a web developer. And we kind of reached out. Matthew, my business partner, our CEO, reached out saying, "Hey, you have a great background. I notice you do a lot of low-level C programming, C++ programming, but you're working as a web developer. That seems strange. Do you want to hear what we're coming?" And it turns out he was doing that for visa reasons, for immigration reasons. And so he was just in that job because he kind of was stuck. And so that was great. And he was with us for 4 years, and awesome. And then the analytics person, we pulled out of a PhD program from one of the local universities. And part of it was that his supervisor had just taken a job at Google. And if you're a PhD student without a supervisor, that's not a very good place to be. So as an entrepreneur, that's an opportunity. And so we had just kind of heard about him through a TA there, and we reached out. And again, he ended up staying
Which
with
school?
us. Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz. So again, it's kind of this random stories. Someone else, we got introduced to somebody else, who helped with the technical operations side. But Damon, the community person, actually was a job posting.
Huh.
And when I think about today, and again, I've hired a lot of people at CloudFlare. We have 450 people now. 50% of the people we hire are inbound, people who find us. They either find us because we posted a job, or they see us speak at something like this, or they read our blog and they think it's interesting and they apply. 50% is really high. I think it's really healthy for a tech company. And then the other 50% is referral. Mm-hmm. And we do very, very little outbound recruiting.
Yeah, headhunters type
We
stuff.
do almost less than 5% of that.
At what stage did you find it appropriate to get sort of what you might call overhead type functions, your lawyers, accountants, and things like that?
Yeah, it's all, so we were really flat for a very long time, and that served us really well because it gave us tons of flexibility. But now, again, I'm 450 people in. It turns out first of all, I love our legal team. They add a ton of value to the company, and we actually hired someone pretty early, when we had 60 people. Mm-hmm. And again, we had outside counsel, but then we brought someone in, and that was really helpful. It helps you not make silly mistakes. Some mistakes can be very costly down the road. Accounting as well. We kind of had a bookkeeper, and we were kind of doing it. We kind of used an outsource firm, but eventually, the way I think about it is we started to have product market fit really early. We were solving a meaningful problem, and we had customers signing up, and it became really clear that Cloudflare was onto something. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't will this company exist? That's not the problem we had. For us, it was can we execute on the potential in front of us in the right order, fast enough, without all the wheels falling off the bus? And managing high growth is a different problem. It's hard. It's really hard. And you see some companies do it really well, and you see some other companies do it fantastically terrible and implode in front of you. And so for us, we knew we had traction and that a lot of foundations there. And so in that case, we started to layer in these different teams. And so we had a controller join again, kind of 45, 50 people in-house, and she was awesome and helped just get things off my plate, off Matthew's plate, make it more professional. Because at the end of the day, you're a real business. We still have fun, but at the end of the day, we're a real business, and we have a commitment to our customers and our commitment to shareholders to deliver on that. And these functions play a big role in helping to make that happen.
How did your investors, VC investors, I know you have some major ones, I think, how did they help or affect the team building process?
Oh God, another topic that there's so much content online about, and again, I have my own point of view. So we've raised $182 billion. We've done 4 rounds, our Series A through D, and what I like to say is not all investors are created equal. And so you should optimize for the person, not the valuation or the terms. And so
the person as in the person at the VC firm?
Yeah, the investor. And so I think we've done a really good job, again, along the way, optimizing for the person, and that served us well. And we have a great board. It's a healthy board. But again, 6.5 years in, I can see how if you make silly decisions, it is really hard to kick an investor out of your company. Mm-hmm. If you marry someone you don't like, that's also hard, but this is even harder. And so it's one of these things where
I'm thinking of the children.
right. Well, it's really. Again, we have investors who have the same vision that we do for Cloudflare. They're very long-term focused and help us do the right thing, help us when we need help, and otherwise trust us to run the company. And it's been a really great. So again, if there's one thing you remember about when you're raising money, it's getting, like, if your gut's saying, well, this person will give us a higher valuation, but I like that person more, and you go talk to other entrepreneurs who've worked with these investors, pick the one you like more that has a shared vision with you. Because again, I think long-term, if you keep creating value, those things can get fixed.
I think our time is up.
All right.
Michelle, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don.
Sure.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Don. All right. Next speaker is Max Mullen, who's the co-founder of Instacart. How many of you use Instacart? Anybody? The one thing I always noticed was that the UI, UX is super clean. And so Max heads up the consumer product. Come on down, Max. Welcome. And he's got an awesome t-shirt.
Oh. Thank you, Nima. Great to be here. My name is Max Mullen. I'm one of the co-founders of Instacart. And just so I understand my audience here, who here's heard of Instacart? If you raise your hands. Oh, wow, that's like everybody. Who's a customer? Okay, cool. Thank you for being a customer. We've been around for 5 years, and we're about 300 employees in 11 offices in America, and we have thousands of part-time employees across the country as well. And I want to share some of my experiences in developing our culture over the last 5 years. So these are the 3 things I think we should talk about. So 1, why should we care about startup culture, right? Why should all of you care? 2, what is it exactly? How do we define it? And then 3, where does culture come from? And how can you form it when you're starting a company? Let me give you 2 reasons why I think you should care about startup culture. This is reason number 1. This is people searching for startups on Google in America. Okay, so this is a piece of evidence I offer you, and you can see that startups on the blue line and the red line were sort of just as exciting as each other until about 2010, and then something happened, and startups really took off, and they're sort of at peak excitement right now. The red line is searches for Girl Scout cookies. And you can see that every February when they sell the Girl Scout cookies, people get really excited about Girl Scout cookies. And for some of these years, Girl Scout cookies were more exciting to the American public than startups, but no more. So startups are on the rise, and regular people care about startups, and so that's something to keep in mind. And then also startup culture is something that's going everywhere, right? Big companies want to be more like startups. They do press releases talking about how they're going to have a startup-like culture and do more innovation. And startup culture is really becoming everywhere. And I'll give you another piece of evidence. You guys have seen this show, right? Silicon Valley, yeah, on HBO. Mainstream show, all about startup culture. One of the previous speakers mentioned this show. And I don't watch the show, but I was surprised to hear that Instacart was on the show a couple of weeks ago. Some people texted me and said, dude, did you just see Instacart was on the show? So further evidence that startup culture is everywhere, and that if you are starting a company, you need to be considerate and intentional about your culture, because eventually, if you're successful, your culture will merge with mainstream culture. And so really the fate of mainstream culture is in your hands if you're starting a company. And then the second reason why you should care about culture is this. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's starting a company with 2 co-founders. They just built the first version of their product, and they don't really know exactly how it's going to land. And I was asking him, like, what's it like? Like, I forget, it was 5 years ago when we started Instacart. What's it like? And he said it's like a Tom Hanks movie. And I was like, oh, like Forrest Gump, like startup life's like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're gonna get. He's like, no, like Castaway. Because you're like Tom Hanks. You're marooned on a desert island. You're in a plane crash. You're by yourself, and all you have is this raft, which is your startup, and some FedEx boxes. Wilson, that's right. And so you guys are Tom Hanks if you're starting a company, and this raft is your startup, and you do what comes naturally, right? You head towards the open water, and you try to get off this island where there's nobody, right? And try to find some customers or some users, and you see this wave in the distance, and then as you get closer, the wave gets bigger, And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to paddle past this wave. And you paddle your raft as fast as you can, and the wave crashes you down the first time you try to do this. And you get hurt, and it sucks. And the second reason why you should care about startup culture is because, and in the movie there's actually this shot. So like 4 years pass, right? And you've either done something right with your culture or you haven't. You become this badass guy, and you build this badass raft, and you launch it into the sea. And now you have a co-founder, Wilson, and you paddle the raft over the waves, and you end up in open water, and you get rescued, and they put you on a jet, and you go about the rest of your life. And so the second reason you should care about startup culture is because startup culture is the one thing that will help you build a big enough raft, a badass enough raft to get over these waves and have escape velocity in whatever business you're doing. Okay, so now you care about startup culture. What is it? Who's got some ideas about what it is? This is a picture of people at Instacart playing ping pong and video games, and there's snacks. Who thinks it's about snacks? Okay, it's not about snacks. Okay, who thinks it's about ball pits? We once had a ball pit in one of our offices. Who thinks it's about ball pits? A couple of hands. Who thinks it's about dogs, having dogs in your office? Maybe put your t-shirt on a dog. Who thinks it's about dogs in ball pits? Okay, it's none of those things. Who thinks it's about taking naps? Having a nap room, those are cool things. Or having parties. Parties are cool. It's not about parties. It's about these 5 things, and I think we can really talk about these 5 things and give you a framework for thinking about culture. So values, stories, spaces, traditions, and rewards. And I'll talk about each of these things. And you can see in the background somebody's got a carrot. That's our logo, a carrot tattoo on their neck, but don't worry, that's just a temporary tattoo. So values. Culture is about what you value. And there's good and bad news here. As founders of the company and as early employees, you already have values. Like, you definitely value something. And what you value is going to become your culture. So if you're a bunch of jerks, you're going to probably build a culture that's full of a bunch of jerks. And if you're super talented engineers, you're probably going to build a culture that's about super talented engineers. So this is myself and my 2 co-founders, and we've got these shirts on. We like shirts at Instacart. You can kind of read them and get an idea for our personalities. But the most important thing is that your values as a company will come from the founding team. And you may or may not want to choose to articulate them in sort of a list of pithy words. Instacart has done this, and some companies do this. Other companies choose not to write them down, but every company values something. You think about Apple, they may not have stated corporate core values, but obviously Apple values simplicity, and we know that by just looking at their products. So I want to show you one of Instacart's values. We call this one every minute counts. And at Instacart, we're a 1-hour grocery delivery service. And so every minute really does count when we're delivering groceries in an hour. And also, we're saving our customers time. And so when you add up all the time that we save our customers, those minutes add up and count. And then finally, the third reason why this is one of our values is that we are all about efficiency. Our business is only going to be successful if we can be very efficient in the way that we do our work. So we use this value all the time at work to sort of mean moving faster and finding a faster way to do things. I'll give you another really cool value from a different company. This is a value that Twilio has. You guys know Twilio, the telephony company? They have a value called Draw the Owl. And is anybody familiar with the internet meme, Draw the Owl? Yeah, a few people. So it goes like this. How do you draw an owl? Step 1, you draw some circles. Step 2, you draw the rest of the fucking owl, because there's no instruction manual for a startup. And so at Twilio, you can imagine people in a meeting saying like, I don't exactly know how we're going to do this project. We probably need to do a bunch of research. And someone's just like, dude, just draw the fucking owl. Like, figure it out. So that's their value. And that's uniquely Twilio. And I think when you write down your values, you don't want to write down things like integrity. Integrity's obvious. You want to write down things that are uniquely you and that can express the values that you hold uniquely. Certainly, I don't take credit for that value, and certainly you shouldn't copy that value. You should make your own, and you can read up about Twilio's values. So the second piece of culture is stories, and stories are a way that you can transmit your values to other people. And the cool thing about telling stories is that you don't have to be there for it to work. So you can tell a story to your employees, and then your employees can tell a story to other people. And that's a way that the culture can be passed on. So I'll tell you a quick story that we tell people sometimes at Instacart. way back in the early days, we were looking at the site. We didn't have that many customers, and so we have this page where you can watch everything that all the customers are doing. You know, they did a search, they added something to cart, they checked out, and so I was watching this page, and I saw this guy. I think his name was Bruce, and Bruce was shopping in Whole Foods on our site, and he was searching, and he searched for butter, and he added butter to cart, and he was searching for like broccoli, and he added broccoli to cart. And he searched for cream cheese, and there was 0 results for cream cheese. And I was like, 0 results for cream cheese? I'm pretty sure Whole Foods has cream cheese. Why is that just not showing up in our search results? And we have a value at Instacart called solve for the customer. This is the idea of going the extra mile for the customer and making sure we put them first in all of our decisions. So I'm sitting there looking at Bruce using the site, and I'm like, well, obviously there's got to be cream cheese, so I'm just going to make it up. So I go into our admin tool, and I make an item called cream cheese, and I just call it Whole Foods Market Cream Cheese. I don't know what cream cheese costs, but I was like, $3.99 seems fair. So I just put $3.99 in there. I went on Google Images, and I found this picture of cream cheese, and I attached it to the item, and then I sent him the link. I went on our little chat program, and I said, hey, Bruce, I'm Max. I work at Instacart, and noticed you were searching for cream cheese, and you couldn't find it. And here's a link to it. I found it for you. And then I watched the admin page, and nothing happens. And then he adds it to cart. And I was like, success, right? We successfully helped Bruce in a very small but important way. And if every small and important decision that everyone at your company makes all day long works out like that, then those people are really embodying the value. And that's just a story that you can tell that kind of makes the value real. It's all fine for me to say, hey, we like to put our customers first, but telling a story to show how that actually works in practice is kind of the way to communicate that. Spaces. Spaces are another piece of your culture. And spaces can maybe sometimes mean your office, and sometimes they can mean other things. So spaces reflect the culture that you set up physically. So I'll give you some examples. This is our first office. This is my kitchen. And if you're starting a company, your house is going to be your first office. It's actually the best office. It's free. It's private. You already live there. It's very easy, no commute. And it sort of sets the tone for your culture depending on where you start out. So this is our first office. Our second office looks like this. It's like this small 750 square foot room in Soma, and we filled it with like cheap IKEA furniture that we built ourselves, and we just filled it with people until it was like a fire hazard. And that's exactly what you want for your first office. You want a big fire hazard, and you just want to fill it with people so there's just a ton of energy and like not enough conference rooms and not enough bathrooms. And then we got this really unique office for our second office. And in this space, which was a house, a 5-bedroom house, we had tons of good times. We had this dinner table where we could all sit and have meals together, and this really set the tone for our culture. And I think we'd be a very different company if we hadn't spent about a year in this house in the early days of Instacart. This is a shower. One guy had a desk in a shower. That's Nick. There were desks in the bathrooms. One guy, my co-founder Brandon, he had a desk over the bidet. There was a bidet in the house. So the bidet desk. You've heard of standing desk, but never a bidet desk. And so unique spaces are also an important part can be an important part of your culture. This is an all-hands meeting in 2014, and the entire company was in our biggest conference room, and we barely fit, as you can see. And like the speaker was standing right here, and this was actually Mary Meeker, who's a board observer on our board, and she literally said, like, I think this is a fire hazard. Like, I don't think we should do this. And I was like, it's gonna be fine, Mary. We're gonna leave the door open, and it'll be fine. And she gave her presentation. And this is what we looked like in 2014 when we reached 100 people. And I tell you, we packed people into this office. There was not enough desks, not enough conference rooms, not enough bathrooms, and that was exactly how we liked it and created the energy that I think we needed in this space. This is our freight elevator, so there was not enough conference rooms, so you'd have a meeting in the freight elevator. You'd start on the 3rd floor, and then maybe the janitor would need to use the elevator, so like your meeting would end on the 1st floor. I think that was kind of cool. And then now we're a little bit of a bigger company. We have a much bigger office, and in our office, we have a grocery store in our office, which is cool because we're a grocery company, so that's kind of one of our new unique spaces. And by far, the coolest office that I've ever been to with the most unique spaces is Airbnb's office. This is what their atrium looks like, and I'm probably going to get somebody in trouble here, but you can actually just go into their atrium without checking into security or anything, just like go on Google Maps and figure out where their office is and go there, and just absorb the energy of this office. It's so cool. And every conference room and space in their office is modeled after an Airbnb listing that they liked. And so they have just the most unique spaces of any startup. So that's spaces, a very important part of making your culture real. Okay, the fourth thing, traditions. So traditions are a way of kind of doing whatever you're passionate about and having these shared sort of traditions across your company. So I'll give you an example of some of our traditions. They're probably going to seem totally random to you, but these are just the way we celebrate things. So one of our traditions is pranking people. Every startup pranks people. Sometimes we fill people's offices with balloons. We recently raised money, and we filled a balloon up for every $1 million that we raised. And then some dude like accidentally popped one, and I was like, dude, it was $1 million. Be careful. We also love to celebrate people's birthdays. If your birthday happens at Instacart, your desk might get pranked. You might get your face on a cake. Maybe we make you a really unique cake. I bet you guys have never seen a tater tot cake. That's a tater tot cake. Have you ever seen a grilled cheese cake? No. And you got to get creative, right? Because everybody's birthday has to one up the other. So we made a sushi cake. And you guys have never seen a sushi cake. These guys have never seen a sushi cake either, because that's why they're taking that picture. So whatever your traditions are, make sure they're unique and that you celebrate them with a lot of passion. And by far the best tradition that I have ever seen at a startup comes from Gusto. Gusto is a payroll company with a really amazing culture. And when you walk into Gusto's office, you have to take your shoes off. It doesn't matter if you work there, if you're a guest, if you're just passing by. You have to take your shoes off, and then everybody who's in the entire office has their shoes off, and you just feel in this weird way like you're at home. I'm not kidding. So that might be one someone should copy at some point, because that's just so good. Okay, and the last thing is rewards. And this is actually really, really important. You have to live your culture day in and day out. And you not only have to live it, but you have to reward people for living it themselves. And you have to show examples of what it's like to be a steward of your culture. And so at Instacart, this is a picture of an Instacart All Hands. We recognize people against our core values at every All Hands. And so I'll give you an example of one of these recognitions. So we have a value that's called go far together, as in the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So our business development team, two of the people on our business development team, they had to take 2 meetings in the Midwestern United States that were back-to-back. One was in the evening, and the next one was in the next morning. And there was no way to fly from one of those cities to the other. There was no direct flight. And so what they did is they flew to one city, they took the meeting, they got in a rental car, and they drove through the night to get to the other meeting. And they literally went far together in order to make these meetings happen for our retail customers. And so we honored them in front of the whole company, and everybody claps. And the point of doing this is not necessarily to honor the people who lived the value. That's obviously great. But the more important thing is that everybody else gets to see a really great example of what it's like to uphold the values. So that's one kind of reward. And another kind of reward is something super simple. We love shirts, like I said. And Instacart has produced many, many shirts, but we never produce the same shirt twice in the same color. And so if you're walking around the office and you see somebody with the black-on-black Instacart shirt, you can kind of know, oh, man, that guy's been here for many years, because that shirt hasn't been made for 2 or 3 years from now. So this is kind of a really subtle way of rewarding people, rewarding their tenure. So that's rewards. And so just to wrap up here, like, one way to think about your culture is to think, what would happen if I wasn't around as a founder, right? Because you might not be around one day, but more importantly, as your company grows, you're not going to be in every meeting, you're not going to be in every room, and you need everybody to behave according to the culture. And so you need to set really strong culture up so that when you're not there to sort of make every decision and be involved in every decision, that the people that you've hired can make those decisions accurately and according to your culture. So ask yourself, what would happen if I was not around? And if you can say that all the decisions would be made exactly how you want them to be made, then you probably have a strong culture guiding your company. So just lastly here, as I mentioned, culture is what you value, and the stories and spaces and traditions and rewards that you set up around your culture will shape it and make sure that it can exist without you. So that's what I think about startup culture. Thank you.
Do we have time? You know, I have to say, you know, you're a $3.5 billion company, but I have to say that's cool. You guys keep it real, and I really like that presentation, because I think I always thought, like, after 100 people, like, it just isn't as fun anymore or as startup-y, but I guess there's hope. So Awesome, Max.
There,
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you like this, or if you didn't like this, tell me on Twitter. Everybody backstage is going to tell me, oh, you did such a great job. It was so insightful. But if you found something super valuable or you disagree, let me know on Twitter so I can make this talk better. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. All right. So who's doing a startup here? All right. Who's going to apply to Y Combinator? All right. So Michael Siebel heads the accelerator program, and he told me that they accept basically 1% to 2% of all applicants. So each batch, they get about 7,000 applications. So if you're the lucky 1%, then you're in good shape. With that, I want to welcome Michael. Michael, coming down. So Mike's going to talk about what it takes to get into Y Combinator, and we decided we're going to do a bunch of Q&A. So get your questions ready, and then we'll have our associates down here come around with microphones. All right, Mike.
All right, thank you guys. So I wanted to do 4 things for you guys. We just finished reading applications, and so the first thing I wanted to do was go over some myths about YC that aren't true. The first one, that acceptance rate is not exactly accurate. I'll tell you why in a second. The second thing I want to tell you about is when I read a YC application, some of the things that I find in an application that are negative, that are kind of against the YC ethos and what we're looking for. And then I want to tell you some things that we love to see. And then after that, I want to answer questions because I know you guys have a lot of questions. So get your questions ready. All right, let me pull up my little cheat sheet here. So the first thing I'll tell you is that applying to YC is not as hard as it sounds. The number one reason why companies don't get into YC is because they don't apply. And typically they think that it's hard to get in, especially when you start looking at the acceptance rate. I'll tell you that the acceptance rate is pretty deceiving. When you think about applying to a college, even though it's an open application process, there are quite a few filters that prevent a lot of people from applying. One of the things that YC is very particular about is having no prerequisites. So literally anyone can apply, anyone can come to our site, submit an application. As a result, there are a lot of good companies that apply, there are a lot of not so good companies, there are a lot of people who don't even have companies who apply. So don't think about the acceptance rate and say, oh my God, it's impossible to get in. What I will tell you is that anywhere between 30 to 50% of the applications aren't really, founders who are seriously working on their startups. So that acceptance rate is a lot higher than you might think. The second biggest myth is that applying to YC multiple times is bad. It's absolutely not. One of the things that we do when we read applications is we look to see in our software if you have previous applications. And we compare where you are now to where you were when you applied previous. And oftentimes companies get invited to interviews because we're really impressed with the progress that they've made since the last time they applied. If you don't reapply, you don't get access to that advantage. It is typical that more than 20% of each YC batch has applied to YC more than once. In the last batch, we had someone who applied to YC 7 times. He got in on his 8th application, and it was one of the best companies in the batch. So please don't be discouraged and don't think you can't apply multiple times. The last biggest myth is an interesting one. People seem to think that YC cares about trends. The current trend might be hard tech, or the current trend might be AI or chatbots or whatever. I can tell you that we really do not care. Very much what we're interested in is whatever you're interested in. And we think predicting what the trend is going to be 10 years from now is pretty silly. So you don't need to think when you're applying to YC, oh, is this an industry or a type of startup that YC is interested in? I will tell you that I have funded everything from social media to rockets to literally like a company that makes speakers, biotech companies, drug discovery companies, everything. YC has funded over 1,500 companies, and there is no trend that's discernible, other than they're building tech companies. So if any of those 3 things are catching you up, please ignore them. And if people tell you these things are important, ignore those people. And actually, there's one more. The last one is that you need a recommendation from a YC alum to get into YC. That's also completely false. Even more so, I think what's very interesting is that a bad recommendation can hurt way more than a good recommendation can help. So no recommendations are required either. Now, here are some things that can hurt you when you're applying to YC. The first is a lack of a technical co-founder. When I read an application, I want to see that the founding team has the ability within their team to bring a product to market, an MVP, and get some users. If that team is relying on outsourced development, if it's relying on, it doesn't really know how it's going to bring the product to market, I don't think of that as a viable founding team. So I think that's something you definitely want to be thinking about when you're applying to YC. The second thing is, we like to see co-founders who know each other. Doing a startup is one of the hardest things you're going to do. And if you've just met your co-founder, it's possible that during the kind of trials and tribulations, you guys might get into a fight you can't recover from. So one of the things we always are a little hesitant by are founders that have met within the last week or within the last month. We think it's pretty tricky to predict whether that team's going to stay together. The next thing that we like to see, the next thing that we are a little bit hesitant when we see is how fast are you moving? There are a lot of companies, and there's been a lot of talk around customer development, and sometimes that confuses people and it gets people to think, oh, I need to be doing tons of research and tons of reports and tons of interviews before I build a product. And we think that customer development is good, but it's far better to have a product that you're showing customers, a crappy MVP, than to have a survey. So we're looking for teams that are moving quickly, are getting product to market quickly, are hitting milestones quickly. And another thing that's kind of tricky about an application is when we see an application where there's a massively unequal equity split between the founders. This comes in a lot of different flavors, but it's typically a business co-founder with a lot of equity and tech co-founder with not very much equity. Here's the problem. It takes 10 years to build a large company. And if the founding team isn't motivated over that period of time, they will leave. And so when we look at our equity splits, we really are trying to figure out what you're thinking as a founder. So if we see that you own 95% and your co-founder owns 5%, we think that that person you don't think is very valuable. Or we think that you don't think that person is going to be around for a very long time, or that they're not very committed. So that's a very negative sign on a founding team. That doesn't mean that everyone has to be equal. I personally like when teams are equal, but that does mean you need to take extra attention. And you can't think to yourself, oh, what is my co-founder going to accept now? You have to think, what is my co-founder going to be happy with for the next 10 years? Oftentimes, your co-founder won't know that. One of the signs of a good CEO is that they can see that far in the future and they understand the people they're working with, and they can give the person the equity that they might not know is going to be motivating them in year 4, 5, and 6, when the company looks like maybe it's not doing so well. All right. Let's go to positives before we go to questions. So the first positive that I like to see is clear communication. How many of you folks have filled out a YC application before? Raise your hand. Great. The first question in a YC application is, what does your company do? The first thing the reader is really looking at is, when I read the first 2 sentences of the company, do I understand what the company does? The number one enemy is jargon. We are not experts in whatever you're doing. You're going to be a bigger expert in your customer base and in your industry than the person reading your application. If you try to use jargon words to make you sound more sophisticated, more smart, more industry knowledgeable, the problem is the person reading your application won't understand what you do. And so you might sound smart, but if you can't communicate, it doesn't matter. So I hate saying this because it's so cliched, But like, if you say what your company does to your parents, to your friends not in tech, and they don't understand, you need to change how you talk about your company. Literally, one of the most important things is understanding the difference between talking about your company to a customer who will understand that jargon and will appreciate it, and talking to your customer, your company, to an investor or an employee or an advisor who might not understand that jargon. And if you can't separate those two pitches out, you're gonna have a problem communicating. So I always say in YC, there's a customer pitch, there's an investor pitch, they're different. Don't use the same words. So clear communications thing, so excited to see. The second thing that we're excited to see is a really interesting perspective that the industry that you're attacking doesn't believe. Oftentimes, what enables founders to win is that they believe something or they know something about their industry that's controversial. That if we were to ask the incumbents, they would say, that's bullshit, I don't believe it. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. We can't grade that. But it's just great to see someone having a viewpoint and being able to attack a market from perspective that they're going to be counted out. And we think that's one of the qualities that a lot of good startups have. And then I see we're at 10 minutes, so get your questions ready. The last one I would say is a good understanding of competition. Once again, we don't want you to be doing tons of research. We don't want you to be doing 6 months of research. But a lot of ideas have been done before and are being done currently. We want to see that you looked at the marketplace and that you figured out what everyone else is doing and why it's not working, or why it could be working better. Usually that just takes an afternoon. But we shouldn't be able to stump you on one of the competitors in your space. That's extremely important. So, with that being said, I'd love to switch to questions. I don't know if there are mics somewhere. You got the mics? Beautiful. And feel free to ask me whatever you like. I'm an open book.
I was wondering, what do you think about solo founders? I know that usually Y Combinator likes, there to be multiple, co-founders.
Mm-hmm.
But I know Dropbox, I think, came in as a solo founder.
So, what I'll say about every single quote-unquote rule and about YC is that it's breakable. I would say that every batch we probably fund a couple solo founders. What I will say though is that we have a pretty strong opinion that it's a lot harder to be successful in a startup as a solo founder. There's still a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of kind of emotional strain, and not having anyone to share it with is pretty tricky, especially over a 10-year period of time. So as a result, when we're reading an application and when we're in an interview and we're looking at a solo founder, the bar is higher, much higher. And so, that's kind of how we look at it. Is it impossible to get into YC as a solo founder though? Nope, we do it all the time. Next question.
Hi. So how do you place applications with one founder versus multiple founders?
He just asked that, right?
No, he said solar, right?
Solo.
Solo, okay. Because it's hard to find motivated people, even though you think you have something interesting. Okay, let me rephrase it.
Okay.
Where would I look for a decent co-founder?
That's a great question. Where do you find a co-founder? I get this question all the time. There are really two plays here. The first thing is that you need to look at all the people that you know personally and professionally. You need to approach this with a blank mind. You need to write a list of the people who you would love to work with a completely blank mind. Do not think about whether or not they want to work with you, whether or not they have family, whether or not they have responsibilities, another job, another startup, doesn't matter. I always tell founders, make that list of 5 to 10 people and make those people say no. So often, you do not know what's going on in the lives of the people that you might want to start a company with. And you might think you do, but you don't. And like, I was on the receiving end of this. I didn't think I was going to start a startup. And my best friend said, Michael, do you want to join our startup? And it changed my entire life. But if he had waited for me to ask him, it wouldn't have worked. So like, the number one thing you have to do is you need to ask the people you want to work with and be prepared for the no. The second thing is, if there are not people in your network, I strongly consider working at a startup first. I think it's extremely important to have a group of people who are interested in startups that you can basically be friends with. And sometimes, if you don't come from a background that allows for that, it's better to spend a year or two at a startup and building those relationships and friends. This doesn't mean networking. This actually means friends. It's helpful to have friends who do startups when you're doing a startup. So those are usually the two typical paths. You make everyone say no, and one of the people who you know already says yes, and bam, you have a founder, your co-founder. Or you go work at a startup and you find friends who are interested in startups, and then you ask them. It's extremely hard, but I would argue that like being a good CEO, the first responsibility is recruiting your team. That's the first bar. And everyone who's successful has to hit that bar. All right, next question. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
What percentage of equity do you take once an applicant get accepted to YC?
The YC deal, which you can find on our website, it's actually right up front, is 7% for a $120,000 investment. Next question.
Hey, thank you, Michael, for this encouraging speech. Just wanted to ask you, so if founders are, like in different cities or in different countries, at least temporary, how it affects, the application?
I think it's tricky when founders are working in different places. It's by no means something that disqualifies you from getting into YC, but I think that the real question is, how productive are you being? So can you show that your company is still hitting its milestones, it's still getting users, it's still interacting with the customers, so on and so forth. We see some folks who are able to do that when they're in other cities. We see other folks who basically don't, who the team is split up, and they've been working for a while and not making progress. I would argue that like, if you're working for a while and you're not making progress, you need to change things. And so if that's what's happening in terms of being in different cities, then like, you gotta change things. The one thing that I think people don't say enough, when I came to the Valley, people lied to me, and it was kind of sad. They lied to me because they wanted to be nice. And by being nice, they didn't give me the advice that I needed, because they didn't want to hurt my feelings, because they didn't want me to go around saying that they were mean. Well, that's not really how anyone learns anything. Imagine if you did your math test and you got all the wrong answers and your teacher gave you an A and said, great job. You wouldn't learn anything. And so one of the things that took me a while to really internalize is that hey, let's talk later, that non-specific, non-encouraging, but a kind of encouraging maybe, was really a no, and there was a reason behind it. So one of the things I like to do is I like to be like crazy honest. And so what that results in is that like, if a startup isn't moving forward, you need to change something. And the reality is that startups are like the NBA. For every Kobe Bryant, there are hundreds of thousands of people who wanted to be Kobe and didn't make it. People don't talk about that. It's not like going to university with a 95% graduation rate. And so like, if you are not fighting tooth and nail, and if you are not progressing, you need to change something immediately. Because literally, most people fail in this game, and if you're not striving as hard as possible, you're gonna end up in that bucket. So once again, it's another thing that makes it a little bit harder to strive, not having your team together. All right, next question.
Do you guys prefer seeded or non-seeded companies, or do you just not care?
I didn't hear that. Say that
do you
again.
guys prefer seeded or non-seeded companies?
We don't care. So we've taken companies that literally haven't incorporated yet. We've taken companies with $40 million revenue run rates. and you've taken everything in between. I should have said that earlier. One of the common misconceptions is I'm too early or I'm too late for YC. I literally have not seen that be the case. YC Demo Day brings together the best early stage investors and the best Series A and B investors. They're all there. And the YC alumni community has billion-dollar companies, and it has companies that are just starting. So there's always going to be people who can give you advice. There's always going to be ways you can be motivated, and there's always going to be value. There really isn't a company that's too early or too late for YC.
Hey, my name is George, and I have a question. So I made a long way to the United States. I've been living in Europe, so I've been in design for 10 years. So I built a company in the United States, a design company, so it became an agency. But my final goal is to do my own projects, and that's why I'm here initially. So the question is maybe really simple for somebody, but I have no idea. I have no answer to this question. What is a good time to apply to accelerator? Or, I mean, like, at which stage you would like to see the companies like applying?
I think that at any point when you're actively working on your startup full-time is a point where you should consider applying. It's really simple. Like, this is not, you do not have to time YC perfectly. You don't have to time accelerators perfectly. You can apply multiple times. It's not one shot and go. So like, don't be too, that shouldn't be the thing that's like worrying you. The thing that should be worrying you is, are you working on your startup yet? If not, why not? That's it. All right, next question. Just keep talking.
Okay. I've applied for YC twice and we got rejected. And most of the points that you raised today, I believe we have been able to follow all of those, and we have showed a lot of progress.
Mm-hmm.
So what is preventing you from giving like a 1 or 2 line feedback? It doesn't take a lot of time. It would greatly help us, improve our application the next time.
So that's a really good question. We only give feedback, personalized feedback, formally to companies who complete interviews. So out of the 7,000 applications, we have about 500 companies we interview, and those are the ones that we give kind of formal feedback to. What I will say is this, is that if you email politely a YC partner, oftentimes they will actually give you informally some feedback on your application, so I would try doing that. I would also say that like sometimes there isn't a good reason, which sucks. Sometimes there isn't a good reason. Like sometimes there's, for whatever reason, the people reading the applications just thought that this other application was a little bit better. So like one of the things that we try not to do is say like, hey, your startup is bad for X, Y, and Z reason, because we're not geniuses, like we don't know. We're just taking our best read as we go through. So my time is up. What I will tell you is this. My email address is michael@ycombinator.com. I answer my emails. So if you guys have questions about YC or about your startups, you can actually reach out. Sometimes I'm really fast and like I'll surprise you and answer in 30 seconds. Sometimes it'll take me 2 weeks. But I do answer every single email. And that's kind of one of the ways that I think investors should act. So that's how I act. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. As you can imagine, that's a lot of emails. When I worked with Adeo, he used to get 1,200 a day, and he would answer every one. So if you're going to write an email, make it short and sweet. Nobody has time to read 5 paragraphs or 5 pages. Okay, so the pitch competition. Oh, awesome. You guys are in charge. So we have 7 companies that are going to pitch for 2 minutes. And we're going to give them some feedback, ask some questions, try to tear them apart or figure out what they're doing right and wrong. With me on stage, a good friend of mine, Eric Miller. So Eric and I met about 5 years ago, and I did an interview. I used to do these interviews in a tent, and he had these glasses, and I actually, the way we met was that I won a pair at Startup Grind. Anyway, so we did an interview. Believe it or not, they got acquired, and those are now spectacles. So You have Eric to thank for that, if anybody wears them. I just got my pair, and they're super cool. Now he's doing a venture fund called Hyperspeed, and he's going to help me judge the companies. So, companies, are you ready? Timers, are we ready? 2 minutes. Okay, Hoppy, you're up. Let's do it.
I'm not Mike. Hello, everybody. How are you?
Sorry, man.
That's okay. We are a company that's bringing craft breweries right to your living room via a product called Hoppy. Craft beers, as you know, taste best when it's fresh right out of the tank. But unfortunately, the only people who have access to these fresh out of the tank beers are the brewers. Why can't you have the same experience as they do? Well, now you can with our product, Hoppy. Hoppy is a product that brings the freshest taste of the best breweries to you. Hoppy is the only product out there that utilizes words created directly by the breweries themselves and brings the authentic taste of their brewery taste directly to you. Hoppy is very easy to use. It utilizes just exactly like Keurig. You put in your ingredients and press start, and the device will ferment the product, ferment your wort exactly as defined by the brewery, so that you will get the best, freshest taste right out of the tank when it's done. We're able to brew over 1,000 pints of different varieties, and the brewmasters of those beers were raving about the results, where some of them said it's better than the beers that are coming out of our tank. We're going to be bringing these beers at the fraction of cost that you get from pubs. We are done with development of the product, and we will be going on crowdfunding at the end of the month. And when it's done, we're going to be starting to manufacture the product. Hoppy is consisting of a very strong team, consisting of a really awesome brewmaster. We have very strong engineering team and former business executives who are very proud and very excited to bring this product to you. Our product is Hoppy, and we will be bringing we'll be bringing the craft breweries to your living room at fresh taste ever. Thank you very much.
Okay, so first question, what's the volume that I can produce if I'm having a party or something at a time?
So you can make 3 liters at a time. The great thing about Hoppy is when you're done with your fermentation, you can remove it from Hoppy, put it in the fridge, you can put a tap on it, a faucet to drink it from there and start making more beer, or you can serve it right out of Hoppy.
And what does that end up costing me compared to a regular premium beer? What does that end up costing me as far as per pint or per bottle?
Oh, sure. Per about bottle or glass, you're looking at anywhere from $1.80 to about $2, which is about 1/4 the price that you get from pubs.
What's the price of the unit going to be when you launch?
When it launches on Kickstarter, we'll be starting at $3.99, and it will go up to $4.99.
And then the like packages, you'll have like a subscription model, or how does that work?
So we're definitely looking at subscription model. We'll be initially starting with I would say, App Store model, where users will be able to get recommendations of the beers to try, so they'll be picking it out. And about a year or 2 down the line, we're definitely looking at subscription model for that as well.
I'll just defer to you because I was being mic'd.
Okay, sorry. What's the cost of the unit for you to manufacture? Is that top secret?
That's confidential.
Oh, okay, top secret. All right. All right, cool. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed most.
Yeah, it's all good. All right. Imminent Digital, come on down. It's your turn.
Hi, my name's... Is this on? Hi, my name's David. I'm from Imminent, and I'm here to talk to you about employee engagement in our platform, Oahu. So the workforce has changed a lot since my parents' generation. Back in the day, people worked for a company 30, 40 years, and then they retired. Their idea of employee engagement was a paycheck. So, and as you can see, the workforce is shifting towards millennials, and they have a very different way of doing things, and they have very different expectations from their companies. The average employee stays with the company for about 3 years. So you can see how this might pose some need for some changes, some issues. So an unengaged or disengaged employee suffers from low productivity. In some cases, as much as 20% lower productivity in companies with disengaged employees than companies with engaged employees. They tend to be absent a lot. But more than anything else, the turnover rates tend to be really, really high. And this means other people have to pick up the slack. This means that they have to pay recruiters. It can be very costly. All totaled up, over $550 billion across US companies per year. So, what do we do about this? We have to operate differently. We have to find new ways to engage these employees. And we do that through a variety of ways, obviously in person, but we've created a platform that addresses these needs, from onboarding, getting people comfortable from day one, knowing that they're supported, recognition, so when people are doing a good job, there's avenues to publicly tell them and to say so. This whole platform is social, it's gamified, people are incentivized to participate, and it focuses on the main aspects of engagement. So health and well-being, having social impact, donating and charitable volunteering, and also feedback and support that you traditionally associate with HR. And first time we're announcing this, but we are actually going to pivot the platform as well to include the university space. So student engagement is a category we're looking to create as well. Thank you.
Cool. So is there an HR person on the back end kind of managing this, or who handles kind of the logistics of it?
So there are a couple ways to do it. Definitely the company's internal HR there are avenues for them to receive impact or info and feedback from surveying. But we also have an option for a third party if, to avoid some of these corporate issues that we've seen, like with Uber, sort of just to ensure that there is security and accountability.
Explain your revenue model.
So right now we are going to beta. So right now for the short term we're a freemium model. We make revenue through transaction fees and add-on services, LMS classes that people can take. But moving forward we would transition to a per user subscription base.
And what kind of numbers can you show as far as the improvement in your data? More engagement, or at the end of the day, I'm thinking, okay, if you're a big corporation and you can show that you can create productivity, how do you actually measure that on the back end?
Right. Well, so the best way to measure it, and as I said, with the workforce, just people not staying at companies as long as they used to. So to take that from a 3-year employee to a 5-year employee would be the best and absolutely the most monetizable way to measure it. But also, we are just in beta right now, so we don't have our own data analytics, but there have been a number of studies, Gallup, Deloitte, they've measured, Harvard Business have measured companies that are top 20 percentile and bottom 20 percentile engagement, and their productivity numbers vary drastically, and their turnover is significant.
And who is your target customer, like what size?
Right, so now we're at the beginning, we're looking for progressive sort of startup type environment companies, so smaller, about 2 to 5K employees, but we'd look to scale up towards enterprise.
So you mentioned you were pivoting to universities. Can you explain that a little bit more and how that changes?
I shouldn't have said pivot because we're still doing the corporate, but we think that many of the things that are applicable for the corporate space are actually equally as applicable to the university space. That's also kind of like a business, student-faculty relationship, the need for security, the need for accountability, feedback. So we think that might also represent a really nice opportunity.
Awesome. Cool. Ciao. Our next company is Intensivate. All right, come on down. Can you give us a time signal for the Q&A too, so we stay on track? Very important.
Hello, how you doing? I'm Sean Hallow, founder of Intensivate. We produce a server that replaces 60 Intel-based servers on machine learning and compute-intensive tasks. Back up a truck to the data center, throw them in the trash, and put ours in. It consumes 25 times less electricity and costs 6 times less for the same level of computation. It runs the same software, but you just drop it in and pay less. So we do this by focusing on just 1% of the customers. These customers have high compute needs, so it's 13% of the server market, which is $7 billion. In 7 years, our company's sales will be $7 billion. The technology is based on a breakthrough microprocessor. We invented it specifically for this market after gaining experience with the market with direct sales. The technology has been validated by Lockheed. They've gone through 5 rounds of technical due diligence, and their top processor architect said, quote, "This has to be built." We have our first version of the chip up and running in FPGA, and the $1 million we're seeking for seed funding will deliver an FPGA system that's a full system, including the software stack, will be running end customer applications. At that point, all of the major risks in the technology will be complete. It's just a matter of building the product. The team has 11 people, including 2 25-year chip industry veterans, a marketing person, a salesperson, and a biz dev person, and myself. I have a long history of technical innovation in the chip industry and a PhD in parallel computation. Machine learning has become standard infrastructure for business, and we are positioned to be the server of choice to run it. Thank you very much.
Please.
So I have to ask, how does this compare with the offerings that NVIDIA has just announced?
NVIDIA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so NVIDIA is focused on what's called deep learning. And there's a distinct difference between deep learning and machine learning. What deep learning does is it takes low-quality data like video and sound samples, and it self-learns ways to enrich in that and ends up with richer features. And those features are then inserted into traditional machine learning. So the end stage of deep learning pipeline is usually a backpropagation neural network that does classification. That can be removed, and many are using k-nearest neighbor, or they're using other classification algorithms. So they're orthogonal markets. Deep learning does not replace machine learning, and NVIDIA is focused on deep learning.
Okay, well, so just to be clear, deep learning is machine learning. That's
No,
like a...
they're not.
Okay, well, we can have that debate later, but yeah, they are.
Deep learning we could call
Yeah.
it a subset, but they're not the same.
Okay, that's fine.
Completely different application areas.
So which aspects of machine learning is your FPGA focused on then?
So it's not an FPGA, that's just the prototype.
Right.
It's a custom chip.
Sure.
The MVP is 28 nanometer, and we're going to focus on 7 nanometer for the first full product.
But you currently have an FPGA that's functioning.
We have an FPGA that's functioning, it's the RTL, so it's ready to send to the manufacturer. We'll send to Basehands or eSilicon to do the back end, and then get the chip manufactured. So it's ready to go.
Okay, so let me just ask the question again. Which part of machine learning is your chip focused on?
Right, so this is a general purpose processor. What we've done is we've tuned the microarchitecture so it does especially well on machine learning and other compute-intensive tests, so high-performance computing, bioinformatics, which means that we run all machine learning software very, very well. The only requirement is it has to be compute-intensive, not I/O-bound. So everything, deep learning, random forest, association rules, you name it.
Okay. So just for training or inference?
Both.
Both. Okay.
It's a general purpose processor.
Cool. Awesome. Probably way over everybody's head, but super cool. All right. Our next company, come on down. Lily.
Let's talk after. My mic is on.
Welcome, Lily.
Hey everyone.
Interesting.
My name is Hua. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lily. We use emotional intelligence to help women find clothes from their favorite stores that will flatter their body and also make them feel their best. So this product is built on a very simple yet scary insight. Girls, as babies at the age of 2, start recognizing themselves in the mirror and start disliking parts of their body. At teenage, they start making relative perceptions about their body. So they look at their moms, celebrities, friends, and have perceptions such as, I have a tummy. And as young adults, these translate into serious insecurities such as, I'm fat and not good enough, I'm less than others. To the effect that women in this country get 13 negative thoughts about their body every single day. Lily is changing all of that. So first, we understand a woman's perception gap about her body and her preferences through a very simple chat on our iOS app. Then, we use the most comprehensive styling algorithms to, given her perceptions, find her recommendations that will necessarily flatter her body. And then, we are able to understand products in as much depth as possible as well. So more than 1,000 attributes about every single item of clothing available on Lily. So we have been in the App Store for the last 11 weeks. 1 in 3 Lily users has already bought from the platform. We've sold more than $80,000 worth of clothes in the last 11 weeks from all these amazing retailers. A few weeks back, we also won the pitch competition at South by Southwest. Lily is built by women for women. My team has experience in personal styling, behavioral science, obviously artificial intelligence, deep learning, and the most important aspect is that this team is extremely passionate about helping women be the best version of themselves. Thank you.
Please. Okay. So just to understand, your platform understands what the woman wants to buy and then makes recommendations. And then you go out and buy it, or they do it directly, or how does that, are you an intermediary, or is it limited to certain pieces?
So they buy from the app itself, so they place an order on Lily, and through dropship we're able to fulfill it from the retailer. So
Right.
they already have so the whole hypothesis is that the user already has an existing relationship with the retailer. We are the experience layer to help them find clothes that will necessarily flatter their body, but also their perceptions, which is our USP.
Does it find garments that will match with their current outfit, or does it sort of find like similar styles, or like what are the different kind of?
So I'll just explain that in a little bit of depth. So the key definition of emotion that we use is the difference between reality and expectation. When the gap is positive, there is confidence. When the gap is negative, there is insecurity. That's the premise of this product. And so we are able to understand where the gap is. How do they think about their body? How do they perceive different parts of their body? And once we are able to understand that about every part of the body, and which happens in the first 120 seconds of a user's chat with Lily, then we are able to in real time recommend products from their favorite stores, such as Nordstrom or Macy's or wherever they like to shop from, that will address their perceptions and also necessarily flatter their body.
And then do you monetize as an affiliate, or what's your monetization? Is it a membership?
Yeah, so we started as an affiliate network to kind of prove the hypothesis. It seems like we are on that track of proving the hypothesis. So now we're building relationships with the retailer where we get a cut of the purchase, a very high cut.
What did you learn after these $80,000 in sales that you didn't know before you actually started selling?
So our key, one kind of hypothesis that we were trying to test is, will women share all this information with us? Will they be interested in kind of, talk to Lily and all of that? And that got very quickly validated because so for them to chat with Lily is not where it is something that's happening a lot. So more than 96% of our users go through that. And that's also happening because when Lily recommends items of clothing, she always explains how it flatters their body. So with every single item. So what the user understands is that if I talk to her, she actually gets better like now, not after 3 months. And so all of that is real time.
Awesome. And then do you believe that that leads to them spending more as well? Is that
Yes, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. All right, party on demand, come on. Where's the party? All right.
celebrations. I mean, you got little Susie's graduation, you got Ted's birthday party, and of course, the Oakland Raiders are leaving town. I want to plan a tailgating party for that. Oh, I wish there was just one simple solution for me to order all my party supplies, just as easy as ordering an Uber. Oh, why does planning a party have to be so stressful? I wish there was an app for that. Wait, there is. Party on Demand is your one-stop mobile party supply shop delivering the party to you in 1 hour less. We deliver tables, chairs, beer, wine, food, and a DJ right to your door in 1 hour less. Now this is what the $51 billion rental industry needs. We're seeking $500,000 to secure our tailgating partnership with the LA Rams and the LA Chargers, a first mover advantage. And with over 100 parties underneath our belt in less than 4 months, generating over $100,000 in stealth mode, we know how to throw a party or two. So forget about the stress. Don't worry about the logistics. Allow Party on Demand to help bring the magic of your party together like butt cheeks. We're going to help that butt cheek slap. Party on Demand, the one-stop mobile party supply shop, helping you, and your best friend sitting next to you to party on. Woo, woo, woo.
That's cool. So, yeah, you definitely get the award for like best positive energy. That was amazing. Right? First question is, so obviously you're automating all of the supply delivery and stuff like that, you know?
Yes.
Do you also, it's just a suggestion or a question at the same time, have you considered sending out party invitations from your app also, because that would have like a lot of strong network effects?
Yes, that's what we're working on right now. Our app will be able to launch in June, and so we're working with Eventbrite to make that happen, make that a possibility in that regard. And hopefully even our own invites as well as Spotify. So now you can upload your music right to our app, so therefore the DJ gets the right playlist, so you can boogie, woogie, woogie, dance, do the damn things.
So as a party planner, I basically have a menu and I can customize, you know, what I want, the theme, what type of music.
Absolutely. So our Insta Party is a little more skewed, right? So because obviously you have to use a reusable situation in that regard. So it rolls out with the themes of the year. So Mardi Gras party, the Christmas party, Hanukkah, etc. But the Planet Party option gives you a full customization on what you're able to do for your parties.
And what does a party cost, or what's the price range?
So introductory price is $299. It feeds 10 to 20 people. Give you 10 large one-topping pieces, two tables, 20 chairs, 32 beers and wine or soda, and a DJ for 2 hours. Want the DJ to go on for a little bit more? $50 an hour, extra hour for every hour after that for the DJ.
That's
awesome.
Very cool.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah. When's the next party? Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to ask one last question. What's the largest party you've done so far, and give us the rundown of what you did there?
Yeah, so the Universal Music Group allowed us to do a party for all their different artists in Los Angeles, and it was huge. We had over about 2,000 people. They called us literally 48 hours in advance because their party planner had fell through the cracks, and they said, hey, can you guys do this? And we're like, of course. And then ESPN called us because their DJ, they had a live DJ that got sick, got into a car accident, and we showed up in the hour and we rocked out the party.
So then, just out of curiosity, how do you scale this? Will you have different cities being covered by different teams, or obviously
exactly
one team can only do one party or one DJ, I guess?
No, so our vans are equipped with a total of 16 parties, prepackaged parties that they can do, and so we're working within a footprint that obviously do that 1 hour or less in that regards, and then kind of scale up from there. And so we're partnering with Amazon to be our distribution partner for the distribution fields, and that's how we'll kind of push it out, following the Amazon Prime Now footprint.
Awesome. Very cool. Party on.
Party on.
Photo Bloom, where are you? I believe so. Can you test it?
Testing. All right. Hi, I'm Justin Lemus, founder of Photo Bloom AR, your favorite printed moments brought to life. We are the first end-to-end interactive print platform that allows you to create incredible printed photo products that come to life with movement and sound, using your videos, all through the magic of augmented reality. To put it simply, we are the Shutterfly for video and easy AR.
Sorry. It's okay.
Now, the way it works is simple. You start by uploading a video and choosing a target photo. This is the photo that gets printed onto the product. Next, you choose a product to customize. This is where you get to make edits and preview what you've created. The final step is to check out and ship. Now, once the product arrives, this way, sorry. Simply open up our free app and scan the target photo. Like magic, the video appears superimposed and is ready to play. The best part, it's a cloud-based system, so anyone who has the app can scan and enjoy, which makes it perfect for creating AR-activated photo GIFs, products, greeting cards, you name it. As long as you have a video, the possibilities are endless. Now, our core team is built up of 2, and we have a long list of advisors, each of which bring a unique expertise to the project. I personally have over 15 years of design, sales, and product development experience, plus my family has been in the printing business for over 40 years. We just got accepted into an accelerator program and are currently seeking the funding to get the platform to beta by the end of this year. So hopefully you'll all be able to create your own products very soon. And in closing, I'd like to say that we truly feel that the future of how people express themselves and share their life's moments is going to be in video. We already see it happening, and these augmented reality tools are going to be key to making that as fun and as expressive as it can be. Thank you.
I'll ask. What will a picture end up costing me? Just a regular print, or?
Yeah, we're trying to, the average cost, we're trying to get around $35 to $37, which is pretty much standard in the photo printing world right now.
And then you said the person trying to view it, they have to download your app, or
I didn't hear that.
they have to download your app to enable to watch that?
You do have to download our app, but what sets us apart from other apps that are available, like say Layer or other AR interactive print scanners, ours has a full creative suite built right in. So it's not just a scanner. You could actually create something right from the app. So if you gave somebody a gift, they liked, hey, that's really cool. Then they could go back and create something themselves if they have a video. This is perfect for, if you guys are GoPro people, now you guys can create merch to sell if you have like a large following on Instagram, or create posters for your house. It's really cool for anyone that's doing stuff like that. Or drone footage people. Awesome. Think of flyby over the Golden Gate or something like that. It would be really neat.
So the product works with any photograph, or it only works with photographs that you print and send to the customers?
It works in terms of what we print, what you can get printed.
Yeah, so you're printing photographs and then they're sent as a gift, and then you open the app and then you have an AR experience.
It's a full service platform.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, well, there's 3 different revenue streams. So one is just software as a service, and then there's a one-time purchase, which is the product bundle, which is you get a physical product, and then we're talking about possibly doing a creator marketplace for video-based artists to help sell their work more easily through our platform. So if, say there's a customer looking to buy a piece of wall art for their house, they can go to our platform. Maybe they're not ready to create something themselves, but they can purchase something really cool that can come to life for their home.
Really cool. All right.
Thank you so much.
Sandstone. Sandstone, come on down. It's your turn.
Hi all. My name is Nazar Fedorchuk. I'm the founder and CEO of Sandstone, and I'm here to talk to you about something that will change lives of millions of people around the world, and that is the voice technology on the go. 2.5 billion people use touch screens every day, about 150 times per day. But for many years it's been overlooked that voice and spoken speech is actually the most convenient and natural way for people to communicate. How do you capture thoughts when you drive? Or you interview your patient? Or maybe you're traveling? The AI makes possible for people to communicate to machine as well. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Sandstone. It's an elegant, sensitive voice tracker. And here how it works. You tap it, speak, and all your voice memos convert to organized text notes in your smartphone. Every note contains emotional, intonational context, as well as time, date, and the location. So we start with narrow markets, going with journalists, bloggers, authors, and other content creators who will use Sandstone in their everyday business. We'll then move to healthcare and other markets such as special needs people and travel. We ran a Kickstarter campaign to verify the concept, and we successfully closed it about a month and a half ago by over-completing the goal by almost 600%. We raised, as of now, $350K, and we need another $2 million to manufacture the product, to scale, and finish our product development. Thank you.
So you haven't shipped any yet? The Kickstarter ones?
Not yet. Our goal is to ship end of summer or beginning of fall.
So you have prototype units that are working right now.
Absolutely. We built 20 working devices before launching the Kickstarter. So we tested with about 30 potential customers. Most of these have written reviews of the device.
So does it require an internet connection, or is it a connected device, or what are the other chips and sensors on it besides a microphone?
It's a connected device. It requires Wi-Fi or the data, cellular data, but it has its own intelligence and the memory capacity for about 3 hours recording.
How much does it cost?
So we tested the market with our backers. The best price is from 100 to 120. That's what we sell now.
Are there any issues as far as like privacy? I know you can't like.
Yeah, sure. So we work on, the security is a big concern here. So of course, I mean, the connection is encrypted. All the data, the sound is, is on the secure protocol. So that's what, we taking care of.
Where does the voice-to-text processing actually happen? And then is that your algorithm, or are you using a cloud service, or what?
So the main AI work is done in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So that's text extraction, subject extraction, and all the other things that we do with the audio tracks.
And you said that it understands the sentiment as well?
It does. It actually two things. I would say emotional state is more like a general, you're sad or you're happy, you're neutral, but also how competent you've been when you spoke, or some other more. And
it gives a score, or what, how does that work?
We would just give the word for now, but like, okay, you were like angry or you were happy, but later we'll think like how exactly to put it on the screen.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is your choice who gets to pitch later. So, where's the instructions? We have instructions? Okay, go to menti.com, type in that code, and then you can vote for your favorite. So again, the top 3 teams get to pitch the investor panel this afternoon, and it's based on your votes. So pick your favorite, and we'll do like a 30-second or minute delay, and then we'll start showing some results, so we'll know who's going to be pitching later on. We have a 20-minute break until the next panel. So if you want to go check out some of the vendors outside, there's a bunch of really cool companies that have doing demos and stuff. But make sure you're back at 12:30 for our next panel, which is the investor panel, and then we'll do a break for lunch as well. All right, guys.